Make yourself comfortable. We begin our walk through Rome the way good work begins, by lamplight, unhurried, step by step. The Tiber moves quietly at our side in the stone edging of the bank. Iron rings wait for ropes knots that open without a struggle. Underfoot lie basalt paving stones, warm by day, even and patient at night. The city gathers from small actions, a cup settling on a baker's scale, a mark on an amphora's neck, a key turning through a gate ring. Aqueduct arches carry water like a measured pulse line, mortar joins tufa and travertine without speeches. The 7 hills breathe evenly. We will look at Rome through things that work without asking to be noticed. Paired lamps at thresholds, cords stretched above narrow lanes, key rings that accept a boat's nose, measures on a bread counter, counted steps along the Appian Way. No surprises, only an order that steadies the mind. If sleep arrives, let it. The story will keep walking beside you, and you can rejoin it anywhere. There will be no shouting here, only stone, water, and hands that know their tasks. We will start at the river and rise toward the forum, pass beneath an aqueduct, step into workshops, the market, the baths, a house with an inner court. Everywhere, the quiet tools return, lamp, cord, ring, scale. Rome will speak through them. Nothing urgent will happen. Sentences will be soft, pauses will be generous. If your eyes close, the lamp will keep your place. When you wake, the road will be waiting on the same stone where you left it. The first part. The river wakes before people do. It moves with the kind of certainty that does not ask to be praised. Between the stone blocks of the embankment, iron rings wait at their posts. A smear of tallow sits under a dusting of ash on each bolt, so fingers that arrive in the dark will come away clean. A boy tests one ring with 2 slow turns. It answers with a soft, even sound and then rests. That is how the day begins on the Tiber, with things that were taught to cooperate. Boats come out of the grey like thoughts deciding to be clear. A barge noses the ring, rope looped once, then once again, in the knot that opens without temper. The deck has a low drift of chaff, and a few wheat grains stuck where water dried yesterday. A man lifts a plank from the pile and lays it to the quay. He does not look at his feet. The plank knows how to find stone. Behind him, an amphora leans in a wicker cradle, the pitch at its mouth warmed at dawn, so it will seal without arguing. On its neck, there is a shallow line from a potter's clean nail, the line that says where a fair measure should settle. The key is a quiet alphabet, a chain with 3 links and a hook, a bale that remembers the press that shaped it, a square of coiled rope where a cat rests like a seal on a document, a jar that has learned to be cool by sleeping up to its shoulder in sand. No one announces anything. The city understands these objects with the same calmness it gives to breath. Upstream, the bridge answers morning with wood and stone, piers shaped to part the current, cut waters that turn drift into a polite shrug, pilings hidden and sure, the deck planks laid at a slant, so wheels will not cut their own tracks, a low rail that tells a night foot to keep its promise. A gauge rod near the abutment shows how high the water is by notches across its face. Someone carved them with a hand that liked to be careful. When the river rises to kiss the 6th notch, people talk about it in the grain queue. When it rests on the 4th, they talk about other things. Bread reaches the river the way days do, without speeches, with certainty. A porter in a wool cap carries a board where 4 loaves sit under a cloth. Each has one modest score and a shallow emblem pressed with a wooden stamp, not letters, a mark that the thumb can understand. The porter sets the board on a barrel head, checks the stamp, and covers the bread again. Somewhere behind a wall, a morning oven rests with the dome's inside turned pale to show it did its work. The peel leans in its place. The cloth that protects hands hangs where it should. The bakery will not be a surprise to anyone who needs it. A lamplighter passes with a pole under his elbow and the basket that earns its name by carrying little unimportant things. A small jar of oil, a twist of wick, a pin to persuade a stubborn spout to remember itself, a scrap of cloth, to bay leaves because their scent has ideas about where morts should spend their evening. He looks at a pair of threshold lamps still burning near a storehouse door. decides the shape of the flame is good, and lets them finish their thought. Someone slept there. The lamps kept their place. If sleep arrives for you, let it. We are beside the water, where rings turn and do not complain, where boats think before they speak, where the morning's breath is a patient one. When you return, the river will still be at its work, and the rope will still open with one honest pull. On the barge, a man stands by a stack of sealed jars. His thumb finds the impression in each small disc of clay. A ring has left a pattern there, 3 lines, then a dot. He touches rather than reads. He carries a narrow board with 3 scratches along the edge. He slides the board over a jar's shoulder. The 3rd scratch matches the jar's fullness. He nods. The scratch is not a number, it is a memory. Clay holds memory well. A customs table has been set up under an awning that remembers winter. 2 balances rest there, a big bean with trays and a smaller bean with a quiet, serious face. The keeper files a bronze disc weight and wipes the rim with a thumb to feel whether the bean will approve. He sets the disc down in a nest lined with felt. Another disc waits beside it. A cousin, not a twin. The keeper keeps the family honest by listening for the tone wood and metal make together. He does not rush to weigh. The person across from him does not rush to pay. Rustling cloth, a coin, an amphora neck knocking a plank. The soft language of morning. A fishmonger works in a square of shade like a carpenter. He opens, rinses, sets each fillet on a bed of salt. He lays a cross piece of reed over the tray so flies who have forgotten their manners will remember. A boy buys a piece for a worker upriver. He pays with a token string, 5 small clay discs from a jar. Each disc has a notch. The fishmonger takes 3, touches the boy's shoulder once, and returns the rest. The boy smiles as if the shoulder tap were the important part. It might be. Across the water, a washerwoman lifts a sheet from a plank and lays it on a rope line tied between a tree and a ring set knee-high in a wall. She uses the knot that opens when asked. No one taught her the name. The knot learned its name by being useful. Light sifts through the cloth and draws a plain pattern on stone. The pattern is easier to like than words. You could walk with us along the bank and find tools making soft agreements. The broom that moves sand without chasing it. The rake that remembers where it left the last small drift of reed. The bowl plate that keeps its iron flat out of habit. A small wooden box for measuring salt. It has a single line cut across the inside. The line of fingernail can feel without waking the eyes. The salt reaches the line as if relieved. The box pours, then rests on its side so it won't learn to hold damp. At a ferry, a pole knocks stones with a rhythm that knows the depth under the current. The ferryman looks downriver to the bridge to see whether anyone is already crossing. He prefers to move when the bridge is quiet. He calls to a woman who is deciding whether to step aboard with a jar at her hip. She does. The jar has a line on its neck too, not a scale. Just a promise the jar keeps for her when her mind is full of other things. The keystones have been laid with a small kindness, the edges slightly softened where feet meet them. A mason did that with a file on an afternoon when he had time for thoroughness. No one thanks the file. 2 children try to balance along a joint and then step into the shade, laughing like rope shaking water. The river does not punish them. It does not need to. The habit of place holds them steady. If sleep brushes your shoulder and asks for attention, it is all right to go. The bridge will keep its line. The gauge will remember the last notch. The lamplighter will find his next pair. The fairy will test the stones with the same patient tap. When you return, you will not have missed anything that insists on being named. Midday in the riverside workshops is a quiet hum. In a lane that prefers shade, a man pinches the beak of a clay lamp and smooths it with a strip of linen. The groove from the filling hole to the spout is a small river that keeps air honest. His neighbor files a weight. A girl trims wicks to lengths measured by holes in a leather strip. For a doorway, this hole. For a reading hand, that one. She lays the trimmed ends in a small jar. Offcuts deserve a second job. Across a little square, a cooper listens to a barrel. He rubs pitch along the inside seam of a hoop with a piece of reed. He tests with a slow circle of a probe to feel for a snag. Smooth the first time, smoother the second. He stops. Doing more would be a way of doing less. He sets a laurel leaf under a stopper. He likes the scent. The leaf also remembers moths and asks them, politely, to live elsewhere. On the bridge, a groom leads a mule toward the forum. He stops by the rail, sets down the pack, and checks a strap for the space where two fingers live comfortably. The mule breathes evenly. The groom unties a knot and ties a better one, the knot that opens even when hands are tired or cold. He hangs the bridle on a peg at the way station. The peg sits under a small basin where people rinse dust from fingers. A pair of lamps is bracketed to the wall in the habit of the house. Two lights make a doorway a place rather than a hole. The bracket remembers exact distances. The lamps sit exactly where they should. The bracket is proud without showing it. In the shade near the abutment, a woman counts figs into a basket without touching numbers. She moves them in groups her hands recognize. A child gives her a reed tube that clicks once for each group passing. The tube is not music. It helps the hand agree with the eye. She hands the child a fig with a crack along one side and a shine at the edge. The child knows to eat over the wall, so the seeds will choose the river. Choices matter, even seeds like to be asked. The smell of river and rope becomes, for a moment, the smell of oil warming for a meal. A man rubs garlic along a slice of bread and touches it with a bit of pickled fish. He stands, eats, looks at the water, and remembers the comfort of a day that moves from task to task without drama. He wipes his fingers on a cloth that has been washed so often it has no vanity left in it. The cloth is the kind of citizen Rome likes best. If you drift, that is expected. We are not telling a story that demands a trumpet. We are noticing a city that keeps its promises with small instruments. When you return, oil will still be learning to be an oval flame rope, will still be turning without protest. A stamp on a loaf will still be shallow and clear. Afternoon reshapes light into long, kind angles. The river shows you the underside of boats, and then the sky again. A man reaches for a ring and feels that it is cool iron, is honest about temperature, and honesty matters. A steward from the grain store walks along the quay carrying a wax tablet. He draws a small line when a barge leaves, another when it returns. He does not scratch letters. He prefers a mark that stands for a thing rather than a sound. The tablet becomes an afternoon's weather record of work. If someone blots it with a sleeve, nothing breaks. The day still stands in sacks under a roof, in seals on the jars, in a cat asleep on rope. On the far bank, steps rise toward a street that begins to carry shadows toward houses. A door stands open, and you can see into an atrium where a shallow pool holds light. A slave cleans the lampstands and trims the wicks to a shape that pleases the eye and the air. A child counts the drops of oil poured into each lamp by lining up pulses with breath. Not exact, enough to be reliable. Someone taught the child to start the count not at the first drop, but at the sound of it landing. Sound is harder to cheat than sight. The bridge keeps a little memory of the day in its timber. When a cart passes, it remembers for a moment to be an instrument, then forgets. The rail gleams at the curve where hands most like to rest. At one pier, a chalk circle sits at flood height. If the river comes at high, the keeper will loosen the boom upstream so driftwood does not pile itself into stubbornness. He knows the chalk will wash away. He intends it to. Chalk is 4 days. Stone is 4 years. Rope is 4 now. Evening brings the lamplighter back. He lifts a lamp, trims a curl of wick that grew ambitious, and teaches the flame to stand. He tilts oil from a measure cup with one scratch at the shoulder, so the cup will not forget to stop. He hangs a lantern in a boat shed, where a man will come later to look for a peg, without waking the entire river. He moves on. The city's edges become rooms. Rooms become gentle promises. The promises become sleep. If you wake and wonder where we left you, we have not moved far. We are still by the rings. They turn with 2 fingers. The knots open when asked. The planks know where stone begins. The water follows its habit with quiet pleasure. You can join us again at any point along the bank. The city will accept you without asking for explanation. The night archivist arrives when steps lose their echoes. He writes on a narrow board with a nail that has learned to take dictation. He does not write sentences, he makes a pocket map of small facts. Ring turns, rope opens, gauge 4, plank sound, seal pressed, scratch respected, weight filed, nest lined, lamp pair, wick obedient, not kind, leaf under stopper. He draws a circle for the flood mark and a small beak for a lamp spout. Then leans the board behind a stone where cool air keeps wood honest. He looks once at the river and once at the cat, then leaves without a sound worth noting. Pocket pitcher to carry into rest. Iron rings with ash over tallow, a rope that knows how to let go a plank, that finds the key without eyes, a jar neck with one quiet line, a shallow stamp on bread, a balance beam whose weights keep their nests, a reed tube that clicks 4 figs, a laurel leaf under a stopper, a lamp whose flame is an oval that refuses to argue, a chalk circle on a pier that chooses to disappear at the right time. If you close your eyes now, the river will keep our place. Rome will keep your place. Small instruments will continue to make the city work until morning asks for them again. The second part. Water prefers a road that knows its manners. Far from the riverside noise, a ridge holds a line of arches that learned how to step without tripping the sky. Each pier is thick where the wind cares, thinner where stone can rest. On top lies a channel lined with a smooth red coat powdered tile in lime, pressed and burnished until water, when it arrives, agrees to glide instead of nibbling. Workmen check the plaster with their palms, the way bakers trust a dough. By feel, not by speeches. A mason runs a bronze mirror along a seam if the reflection stays unbroken. The seam is honest. A small spring house up country feeds this road of water. It is a low, square room with a stone lid and a doorway that never has to lower its voice. Inside, a basin collects what the hill gives. The water enters quietly through a slit mouth cut clean into rock and leaves more cleanly by another. A reed basket sits where the flow begins and teaches leaves to keep their ambitions. A new basket waits on a shelf, and beside it a brush that remembers the right stiffness. A man lifts the basket with 2 fingers and nods at the weight in his grip. The spring has been a good friend overnight. Down the slope, the channel plays the oldest trick. It pretends to be flat, while it very slightly declines. The builders work with a water level, and the line stretched like a patient idea from peg to peg. One bends to peer at a bubble that must stand in the middle of a glass tube. Another nudges a peg with a tap that says this is enough. On curves, they thicken the outer wall and let the inner wall breathe. Where the ground sinks into something foolish, the arches rise and teach it respect. At a hill shoulder, the water pauses to think. A settling tank opens under a low roof. 3 receiving basins sit in a row, each lower than the last by a hand's breadth. Water enters the first, heavy with small quarrel sand, silt, bits of leaf, drops its arguments, and steps over a lip into the second. There it lets go of what it still clung to out of habit. In the third, it becomes the sort of water a city can trust. A keeper draws the wooden rake along the first basin once each morning, pulling a thin blanket of yesterday's talk into a basket. He does not hurry. Gravity writes slow letters you can read with a rake. From the settling place, the channel keeps its temper and finds the head of the city, a round crown tower with 3 mounts, castellum, the quiet distributor. Inside, a circle of masonry holds the flow. Dividing walls create 3 compartments, slots near their feet except plugboards carved with steps, so the keeper can apportion without bargaining. He sets 1 board lower for the baths today, because weather has remembered to be cool. The public fountains keep their usual share. The private taps wait with patience made of bronze and habit. Lead pipes leave the castellum in the ground like roots. A plumber sits on his haunches and rubs a seam with a stick of tallow soot. He breathes gently against the joint. Where air sneaks in, the soot darkens. The joint gets a second thought with a hot iron. He adds a sleeve and a band of hammered lead, then a cord cinch that will hold until the sleeve remembers its place. He wipes the seam with a cloth dipped in a thin mud that dries to a shy polish. No numbers are scratched. He recognizes his own hand by the way a bead rises near the edge, a small signature that neither boasts nor lies. At a corner of the street, A bronze stopcock sits in a stone box with a lid that fits like a promise. The handle turns with a steady weight. It stops when it should, and no sooner. A boy learns to listen for the tone a spout makes when full, when nearly, when not yet. The three notes are cousins, not twins. In a lane beyond, a fountain gives its face to a small square. Water rises in a simple stem and falls into a basin whose lip has been softened by decades of cups, hands, and jars finding their balance. Two stone handles flank the basin so shoulders can rest the weight while wrists find their angle. Beneath, a runnel carries surplus away. A grill keeps stones where stones belong. In a courtyard, a cistern keeps the day from drying. Rain that fell last month waits in coolness under lime plastered walls. A chain runs over a worn stone. A bucket learns to descend without sulking. And a pitcher rises with a sound that would be silver if water were a metal. A woman ties a cloth over the pitchers, mouth against dust, and sets the pitcher half buried in a tub of sand that has learned to be cool by never arguing with shade. The cloth is not called a filter, it is called respect. Baths wake with a whisper. Workers lay kindling in the hypocauste's mouth. Not much, not sudden, and coax flame to learn the job without swagger. The warmth walks under the floor on small brick pillars that prefer to carry heat rather than weight. In the next room, a channel carries hot water to a pool and cold to another. A valve listens to the hand that turns it and moves with the grace of a door in a house where argument is uncommon. Attendants rub oil into wooden ladles until the grain remembers to be quiet. They lay strigils on a shelf, their edges dull enough to teach the skin respect. If sleep arrives, let it. We are following water at the pace water prefers. Arches teaching balance, plaster teaching glide, a bucket learning to come home full without spilling its manners. When you return, the tank will still be settling, the fountain will still be rounding its lip into kindness, the cock will still stop where stopping means enough. Morning travels into midday without needing to announce. A carrier fills jar after jar from the fountain. With the measure he trusts the scratch inside the neck, where a potter remembered to leave one clean line. He sets each jar under on a sled of woven reed to handles allow a second set of arms. When stairs decide to be unhelpful, he tucks a folded leaf of laurel in the knot at the mouth, because leaves have quiet opinions on small flies. He does not read the leaf, he trusts its scent. Trust is a memory of successful days. Up on the arches, two men inspect the channel, where shade gathers under the coping. One has a brush tied to a pole, the other watches the brush's shadow to see whether the line of shade and the line of plaster still agree. Where they do not, the brush pauses and the hand that holds it removes what time tried to give and no one asked for. At a joint, a thin crack drinks a little water under a hot sun. The seam forgets itself and widens to honesty. The men mark the place with a smear of red chalk that will tell the next crew to bring plaster and humility. Near the castellum, a scribe keeps the record with a wax tablet and a string of pebbles. He slides one pebble from the left knot to the right each time a cart of amphorae leaves for the baths. He draws a small wave on the wax at noon, as the water kept pace with habit. A fat wave, bit forgot and needed coaxing. He writes no names. He listens to the water's calendar and gives it to marks. Good, not good. Today the marks are good. He smiles the kind of smile you wear when the city cooperates. In a laundry yard, a washer beats linen with a smooth board over a trough fed by a narrow pipe. She lifts the fabric, rinses it in a clean flow set aside with a plug, rings, and then lays it over a line. The line runs under a cord stretched on pulleys, and with an easy pull she moves the cloth into shade or sun. The pulleys turn slowly. A smear of tallow with ash keeps them minded. On one post hangs a small bell. She taps it with a knuckle after a good rinse. Not as a signal to anyone else she works alone, but to teach the day to keep time. Beyond, at a corner where 4 lanes agree to share, a water seller ladles gentle mouthfuls from a jar sunk in a tub. He wraps the jar's shoulder lightly before the first ladle. The note tells him where the last evening's cover kept mischief out. He wipes the rim with a cloth that has already been washed today. He will wash it again when the jar is empty. He takes clay discs with notches and returns clay discs with different notches. Clay understands trade when you do not ask it to be beautiful. Beneath the arches, a shadow workshop repairs a length of lead pipe. The cut reveals the channel like a silver tongue. The plumber cuffs the end backward, warms it, and hammers it into a collar. He slips the mating pipe into the mouth and dresses the overlap with a ring of soft metal. He burns a little charcoal, a recurved spoon, and holds the spoon where the seam will accept it. The heat climbs. The ring melts. The seam drinks. A boy holds a reed to the joint and blows the slowest breath he knows. When a bubble appears, the seam thanks him for the lesson and stays closed. Water becomes a straight story again. If you drift, you will not fall behind. Pipes do not hurry when watched properly. Fountains do not change their minds when no one asks them to. The city prefers routines that do not mind being ignored. Late day brings the baths to a finish line everyone understands. A man draws a finger along the lip of the warm pool and watches the ripple begin and end. Another tastes a drop of cold with the tip of his tongue, the way a baker checks a dough's salt by memory rather than arithmetic. The floor radiates a modest heat, good 4 feet, good 4 backs. In an anteroom, a jar of oil stands with a moth leaf under its stopper, and a bench holds cups that learned long ago to chatter their teeth when filled. The lamp niches have paired ovals already prepared for evening. Down in a basement the public rarely thinks about. A keeper pulls a screen from a waste channel and lays the captured reeds aside for tomorrow's brooms. He rubs ash into the wood where water sat, because ash asks wood to be its better self. He draws a line with chalk on the wall at a height that says open to holes if water reaches it. If the chalk washes away, good, the holes will have been opened in time. Chalk is a voice that is happiest when it does not get to speak. Street by street, the day begins to shine by reflection rather than direct light. Water makes it possible a trick with no trick. A porter fills a slender amphora at a wall-niche spout. The bronze face of the outlet has become a thumb-shaped gleam where hands have steadied themselves for years. It is not new and not old. It is what happens when a city remembers the same movement enough times to make a polish you can trust. The Night Archivist stops at the fountain where the basin lip rounds under the hand. He writes on his narrow board without leaning against anything that is wet. Spring basket, light channel, smooth tank-raked boards set lower 4 baths, stop cockstern and stop cistern cool. Sand awake, hypocost kind joint sleeved and taut to hold. Laundry pulley, polite cellar jar wrapped. Cloth fresh, screen cleared, chalk drawn. He adds a small arch for the water road, a 3-teeth comb for the settling rake, and a circle with 3 short lines for the costellum's mouths. He slides the board behind a dry stone at the base of the fountain, where splashes do not reach. Who will read this? Perhaps no one. The board has learned that keeping truth available is enough. Pocket picture to carry into rest. A redline channel that hears the palm say smooth, a springhouse reed basket, lifting with 2 fingers, 3 basins stepping sand out of water, a dividing tower with plugboards set to today's. Share a bronze handle that turns with a memory of right angles, a cistern rope that whispers over a worn stone, the soft grid of hypocost pillars under a floor that feels like a good hand, a lead sleeve drinking heat and ceiling. Clean a pulley that moves cloth from sun to shade, a bell tapped once 4 time, a chalk line that hopes never to be tested, a fountain lip rooted to the shape of patience. If your eyes close now, the aqueduct will keep its fall, the fountain will keep its oval sound, the baths will keep their warmth until the lamps ask for it. When you wake, the water will still be where it should be, and the city will still be the sum of quiet agreements. The third part. Stone keeps accounts even when no one writes. In the pale hour before stalls remember their colours, the colonnade along the forum is a row of quiet doors and shuttered mouths. A broom draws last night into a neat drift. A porter rubs a little tallow into the pivot of a wooden shutter and finishes with ash, so fingers come away clean. Hinges open with the sound you want from old wood, not a creak, a breath. A rod slips into brackets, a canvas awning rolls forward and learns its morning shape. Cords run 2 rings set in the paving, and knots that open when asked settle with 2 easy pulls. Counters wake next. A baker's plank finds its legs, 4 loaves come out from under a cloth that travelled warm against a chest. Each loaf wears one shallow score and a small pressed emblem, simple, not loud. A knife wipes itself on a rag that remembers salt, not soup. Beside the plank, a measure cup shows a clean line inside the neck. The line will be the day's habit. When a jar's lip kisses it, pouring stops. Close by, a jar that slept shoulder deep in sand gives a drink that still believes in cool. Along the colonnade, scales take their places. A long beam with trays, knife edges polished with chalk. A small coin scale in a wooden box. The keeper checks his bronze disc weights one by one, not for the number no one sees, but for the way each disc sits in the tray, and lets the beam find level. He files a shiber from a rim. A felt line nest welcomes the weight back like a bed with its own memory. 2 cousins, not twins, rest side by side. The beam approves without applause. Across the way, the standard bench waits in stone. 3 round cavities. A rectangle with soft edges. They are not bowls, they are promises. A measure bucket with a square lip fits each cavity flush full. Half, quarter. Edal's men, when they come, will press a bucket down and look for daylight along the seam. Today they have other streets to trust. The bench is enough. A small reed brush sits under it to teach sand to mind itself. Cloth merchants unroll bolts that carry a faint scent of dye and river. A chalk snaps a line with a soft whisper. A measuring rod shows notches that are kind to the eye and kinder to hands that learned counting by bundles, not by books. The seller's knife is dull on purpose. At the tip he cuts with the belly, so threads do not panic. He wraps the cut length around a wooden core that remembers how tight is respectful, then ties the cord that opens the first time and not the third. If he sighs, it is because the morning fits too well, not because it does not. Rope lives here too. A coil heavy with sea air, a line thin as a purse's patience. The rope seller makes a loop and shows a beer the one knot that agrees to serve and to let go. He sets the knot slow, then pulls the standing part once, just once, to teach memory. He rubs the rope over a little plate of iron, smoothed by 100 demonstrations, a kindness against burn. When he lifts his hands, the loop keeps its circle without pride. That is the kind of rope this city respects. If sleep arrives, let it. We are in a place where awnings breathe and scales settle, where chalk lines speak quietly, where knots choose usefulness over drama. When you return, the beam will still be level, the cord still obedient, the measures line still honest to the lip that greets it. The fishmonger arranges his tray as if it were a shelf of tools. No display for shows. A bed of salt, clean as a claim. Fillets lie in order. A crossbar of reed rests over them. Flies reconsider their day. Payment arrives not as noise, but as a string of clay discs with notches. 3 notches given, 1 returned. The ledger is a smile and a nod. A boy runs a hand through a tub of water sunk in sand. It is cold. He ladles a cup for the monger, and the monger thanks the boy as if water had been invented this morning. At the grain table, a steward draws a line with the edge of a board across the top of a measure bucket filled from an amphora that smells like a good warehouse, pitch and patience. He lifts the board level, then slides it toward himself like smoothing a bed. The grain falls back to its place. No mountain, no theatrics. The bucket goes to a sack with its mouth held open by a ring. The ring is iron with 2 ears. Where a bolt once lived, someone taught it to work with cloth, and it learned. The steward ties the sack with a knot you can undo with 1 finger and an ordinary day. Coins whisper, not in numbers, in tone. A banker flicks a denarius and listens for the right ring. He touches it to a touchstone and looks at the dark trace, the way a baker looks at a crust's color habit rather than suspicion. The coin scale answers with a breath when trays equalize. He wipes the scale's knife edges with chalk and a piece of leather. He writes nothing. On his tablet, he draws a small circle for each settled exchange, and then hides the tablet under a cloth that knows when to be invisible. A garland of tools frames the morning, a peel leaning in a niche, a flat board for cheese, a small sieve for flour whose wires taught itself to be patient. A seller of lamps holds one to the light and checks the groove from filling hole to beak. He pushes a bristle through with the care you give to an old friend's throat. The bristle passes. He smiles for himself and no one else. He sets the lamp on a shelf in pairs. Doorways remember pairs. At the edge of the square, a fountain does its own speech. The lip has been rounded by years of cups and jars and hands. Someone set to stone handles at hip height weight goes there, while the wrist finds the angle that makes a pour graceful. A little grill under the spout asks stray pebbles to stay honest. In a corner, a bucket rests half buried in sand in a shallow tub. The sand remembers calm with no effort at all. A laurel leaf hides under the stopper of a jar like a quiet rule that asks moths to be polite. Midday folds itself into the shade. A dyer splashes a corner of cloth, not to test color, but to learn how the weight likes to move when wet. He wrings gently. The cloth in his hands does not complain. He cuts a sliver from a stick of alum and taps it into a jar. He does not say measure. He trusts the size of the sliver because his hand has been making that decision for years. He stirs with the same reed each day. The reed is stained with the years, and the dyer would not trade that stain for clean. If sleep touches your shoulder and suggests a small journey away, accept. The chalk line will still be true on the bolt when you return. The cord will still open without a struggle. The scale will still find level by habit rather than effort. Afternoon invites slow errands. A cobbler taps small nails into a sole with a rhythm that has nothing to do with marching. He oils the leather lightly with cloth that learned the difference between generous and foolish. He checks a strap against a two-finger rule that keeps cuts from becoming complaints. He looks up and admits the light has moved. He leans the shoe near the door so that the last of the day can finish what the hand began. Nearby, a spice seller opens a jar and lifts the lid just enough to take a pinch, not enough to invite the world. He rubs the pinch between finger and thumb and watches it go from proud to ready. He sets the pinch on a small square of paper and weighs it. The beam responds the way a good host does, neither too quickly nor with boredom. He folds the paper around the pinch and ties it with a thread. The knot, the same knot that opens at the first tug, sits neat. He stamps the fold with a wooden stick whose face is a sun that does not argue about meaning. The Edal's assistant arrives with a leather bag of tokens and a wax tablet. He checks one measure bucket against the stone cavity, presses it gently, sees no light, nods, and moves on. He pauses at the scales. The keeper welcomes him with his hands away from the beam. The assistant dabs a little chalk on the knife edge and slides a strip of reed under the beam. The beam floats. The reed sighs, good. He scratches a small wave on his wax habit, weather, approval all at once. No speech. The forum likes assent without performance. Children balance along the line where shadow meets sun. A dog travels from stall to stall discovering which hands have the memory of trimming meat. The dog's tail learns 3 new rhythms in 5 minutes and then forgets them in favor of the next. A cat remains on a coil of rope with the focus of a saint who has given up on opinions. Evening prepares the forum to become a room rather than a place. Canvas rolls back. Shutters turn. The awning cords coil themselves into obedience. A lamplighter returns with his quiet basket oil, wick, pin, cloth, and to bay leaves, because habit is also a kind of kindness. He sets lamps in brackets in pairs. The flame in each learns to be oval, not sharp. Ovals are easier to live with. Shadows soften. The stone bench of measures is a dark rectangle now, dignified, not asleep. The Night Archivist arrives and writes on the narrow board, with the nail that never pretends to be a pen. Shutters ash after tallow awnings out. Cords honest bench true. No light at seam beam level the profiled nest felt. Waits home rope block, learned chalk line respected cloth measure rod kind coin ring and stone agree, fountain lip soft. Handles right laurel under stopper lamp spared and oval. He draws 3 small cavities for the bench. A beam with 2 trays, a loop for a knot. He slides the board behind a column, where night airs dry and the stone remembers to keep secrets. Pocket pitcher to carry into rest. A shutter pivot greased and dusted canvas rolling forward and learning its curve cords running to iron rings in paving a standard bench, with a bucket fitting flush a beam balance with a filed. Wait returning to a felted nest, a chalk line. Across a bolt of cloth, a rope loop tied in the knot that opens without argument, a jar in sand breathing cool, a laurel leaf. Beneath a stopper, a coin's ring on a touchstone's patient. Face-paired lamps turning a colonnade into a room. If you close your eyes now, the market will finish its sentences without you. When you wake, chalk will still be chalk, scale will still be scale, rope will still be rope, Rome will still be Rome, made of small agreements that do not need a trumpet to be true. The fourth part. Evening makes a promise the baths know how to keep. Heat will not rush, water will not startle, stone will carry warmth like a memory across floors and into rooms where voices learn to speak with round edges. The door to the apoditarium changing hall swings on a pivot that has known oil and ash in the right order. A pegged wall faces you, holes bored smooth by hands that never tried to hurry. Each peg has a small token hanging from a cord baked clay. A notch, a scratch, sometimes a little raised circle with a dot. You trade your sandals and tunic for one of those tokens, not because the attendant doubts you, but because habits prefer proof to pride. Baskets sit in tiers, woven to hold without complaining, lined with reeds that make a soft sound when you lift them. An attendant ties a cord around your bundle with the knot that opens even when fingers are damp. He slides a slender wax tablet into a niche and draws a circle and a short line for what he has taken a sign for sandals. Another for a belt, not words. The bath likes pictures better than arguments. On a shelf, a row of small flasks wait, unguent jars with narrow throats. Some hold simple oil, some carry a whisper of bay or myrtle. Their stoppers wear a thin leaf and a cork, because leaves convince small wings to be humble. Step forward, and warmth rises through the solace from the hypocaust, a hollow underfloor where low brick pillars stand in a patient grid. Fire lives beyond the wall in the Profernium. A man there coaxes coals to behave, feeding billets lengthwise, so flame wanders under the floor without learning arrogance. He sets a brick here, takes one there, so currents choose breadth before height. In the walls of the coldarium, hollow tiles stack like quiet chimneys, drawing warmth up and giving it back without fuss. You can hear it if you lean, no hiss, only a soft idea moving. The tepidarium holds the day at arm's length. Benches curve around it, lamps sit in paired niches with beaks pointed as if listening. An attendant wipes a bench with a cloth already damp from wiping other benches. He wrings it at a drain that knows its job so well it need not be seen. Men sit and let heat become a thought their backs and shoulders can read. A water clock stands in a corner, an earthen jar with a tiny hole at its belly. It empties slowly into a basin marked inside with little shells of clay. When the water kisses the third shelf, an attendant turns a valve a half hand and the room agrees to be slightly warmer. No calling out. The clock never speaks, it persuades. In the coldarium, heat finds its eloquence. A bronze basin, a labrum, stands on a column, full of cold water that holds its breath. Beside it, the hot pool, the alveus, waits with a surface that trembles once when a ladle disturbs it, and then decides to be still again. A boy tests the hot with a bronze ladle, lifts it chest high, and watches the steam rise without ambition. He sets the ladle down on a block of wood, so the handle doesn't teach blistering. An attendant offers a small cup of warm water, sipped first, not later, because the body likes to be told what kind of evening to expect. Strigils lie on a tray, curved scrapers with edges dulled on purpose. A man pours a small thread of oil into his palm, rubs it over shoulder and arm, and an attendant helps scrape it away, taking dust and the day with it. The scraper's curve meets skin and leaves no complaint. The oil is not a perfume, it is a courtesy. Behind, a shelf keeps little linen swatches folded into packs, the size of a fig. Each pack is tied with one twist of thread that knows how to give him one pull. Offcuts of wick live in a small jar for lamps who ask for a correction later. If sleep arrives for you, it is welcome. The baths will proceed without your attention. Water will fall back into its own rhythm. Heat will travel under the floor like a tame weather. Attendants will finish a gesture they began without needing applause. When you return, the lamp ovals will still be patient, the stone lip of the labrum will still shine where rounded hands have rested 4 years. In the laconicum, the dry room, the ceiling curves like a held bowl. A small vent opens as a circle and becomes narrower when an attendant turns a wooden disc across it 1/4. Then a finger more. Heat breathes, not roars. A man standing at the wall touches the tile and counts to 5. The wall answers with a warmth that makes him nod. He sits. The room asks nothing else. On the way out, he dips fingers into the labrum, lets cold speak in its one clear sentence, then nothing more. The tepidarium gathers people again, making back and forths feel like a procession rather than an errand. A seller with a tray passes quietly, 2 figs, a heel of bread rubbed with oil and salt, a few olives that remember Brian kindly. He takes clay discs with notches, he returns clay discs with different notches. His tray is a ledger made out of wood, easy to balance, easier to believe. He sets the cups by the water clock, not because it asks, but because he likes the idea that time deserves company. In the corner, the massage bench does ordinary miracles. A man warms oil by rolling the small flask between his hands, then rubs circles into a back that answers in small, honest noises. Knots forget. A shoulder remembers that it has a job but a home too. He finishes by pinching along a line beside the spine. He wipes oil away with a cloth that has been washed too many times to pretend artistry. The cloth is a citizen, it goes where work is. Someone checks a set of bronze taps. Each turns with a weight that is neither shy or boastful. He turns one back a fraction because the room has reached agreement with the evening. He leaves fingerprints that the next hand will not notice because the next hand will belong to someone who trusts the taps more than he likes to admire them. If you drift, you will not lose your place. The water clock keeps it, the paired lamps keep it, the basket with your token will keep it. Rome has a talent for patience that does not look like waiting. In a small side room, women have their hour in another. Men, we leave them there quiet. What matters for our ears is not conversation, it is procedure. A towel is hung with its own half-twist. Sandals rest on a low shelf with the strap facing out so a hand finds it by habit. A pin is stuck in a cork where it cannot go missing underfoot. A reed comb lives teeth down, not teeth up. These are the rules that keep even a busy room from becoming a test of temper. The furnace tender rubs a little ash into the brick lip where his paddle rests, so the paddle will not learn to char. He pulls a screen from a waste run and sets aside reeds and straw to dry for tomorrow's kindling. He draws a chalk line on the wall at an elbow's height. If embers reach here, add no more wood. Chalk is a quiet master. The tender prefers to please it. Near the exit, a small workshop sells the modest luxuries of sense and comfort. A woman tests a lamp wick by trimming it to the length of a notch in a strip of leather for a reading lamp. This notch for a corridor. That one. She dips the cut end in oil, lets it drink, then wipes the beak of a lamp with a cloth and lifts it to her eye. The flame, when lit, will be oval if the beak is right. She sets pairs of lamps into a basket, pairs for the thresholds, always pairs. A perfumer grinds bay leaves with a little salt in a mortar, lifts the pestle, and smells without ceremony. He folds the paste into oil with the same spoon every evening. Its handle is stained with years of green that will not wash away and should not. He pours through a linen that he will rinse and not wring. He sets a laurel leaf under a stopper because ritual is just a list of small successes that have been written down in the hands. In the apoditorium again, the attendant takes your token as if exchanging nods with the day. He brings your basket, sets it on a low block, and steps aside because dignity and small steps are friends. You dress in order. Sandal strap passes through the ring, but only once, twice would be bragging. You tie the knot that forgives cold fingers. You wear your belt in your hands and feel the pleasant fact of a thing that fits. You return your token not as a return, but as a salute. Outside the bath, the street has become a room too. Doorway lamps burn clean ovals. Their brackets hold them at the distance that learned minds once decided turns a wall into an address. You walk slower than when you entered and notice the weight of your feet with gratitude rather than complaint. A boy passes with a bucket and a chain. He does not spill, because the bucket and the chain have been taught their manners and remember them even when the hand holding them is newly tired. If you wake later and wonder where we are, we have not left the baths completely. Some of us remain by the hypocaust to hear the last breaths of heat under tile. Some stand by the labyrinth watching water hold still. Some sit under paired lamps and think nothing special. You can join us there in any of those exact nothings that make a city gentle. The night archivist walks the route back to the door the way a finger traces letters on wood. On his narrow board, he writes with the nail that does not hurry. Tokens pegs full, trades true basket steers sound cords untied, in one pull floor warm, pillars patient profernium fed, lengthwise wall tiles draw heat. Return kind water clock third shelf kissed at seventh lamp labrum lip shining, cold honest strigils edges dull. Duties met tap sterned back a fraction waist screen cleared chorkember raw marked wick trim by notch oil bay folded. Linen rinsed, not rum lamp spared at thresholds. He draws a circle for the labrum, a comb of little piers for the hypocaust, a small ring for the token, pocket pitcher to carry into rest, the peg board with patient tokens, the basket's reed sides whispering as it slides, the underfloor pillars, like a quiet orchard, the bronze ladle cooling on its block, the labrum's round lip waiting. For a brief dip strigils, lying tame on a tray a water clock steady thread taps, that turn and stop, if they knew when to be enough a chalk rule, that likes being obeyed a wick trimmed to the exact notch a laurel leaf beneath her. Stop a paired lamps finding the right height for night. If your eyes close now, the floor will keep its stored warmth, the lamps will keep your place, and Rome will keep its habit of making rest out of craft. The fifth part. Night steps in without closing the door. A house learns how to be quiet, one hinge at a time. The street is a narrow canal of shade. Then the threshold admits you, and everything becomes a courtyard with its own weather. The opening in the roof, the compluvium frames a square of deepening blue. The shallow pool below the impluvium catches a last rectangle of sky and turns it into a gentler light. Water in the pool is not loud. It rests, then moves, then rests again. You can see where hands always touch the rim, stone made smooth by permission, not by force. A broom leans in its place, bristles bound with cord, and a knot that forgives. A woman draws the broom once across the mosaic, not to erase, but to remind the room how to be orderly. Tesserae under the broom know their colors even in low light ochres, blacks, small creams and one ribbon of blue, that the house keeps as a secret 4 days when the sky is late. Near the door, paired lamps burn with oval patience. Doorways in Rome prefer pairs, to flames make a threshold a promise rather than a hole. A little soot collects at the beaks, someone will wipe it with a cloth that learned, long ago, to be humble. Keys hang on a peg in the atrium. Small bronze teeth with ring handles big enough for one finger to keep company. They are not heavy. Locks in the doors are slides and wards, wood guided by iron. A bar sits in brackets to turn the door into a wall at night. The brackets have learned to make no sound when the bar sits, and no protest when it lifts. A cord hangs from the bar's end, because cords remember where fingers like to land. A second peg keeps a spare key, not a twin, a cousin. Houses like their contingencies uncomplicated. Against a painted wall, the family shrine the lararium keeps a simple order of things. To household spirits stand with hands that calm, rather than command a small dish a patron rests ready. A tiny cup beside it a spiral of dried bay waits under a clay stopper. The shelf holds no famous names, only shapes the hand trusts. A lamp burns there at dusk, and then rests a fresh wick trimmed to the length of the third notch of a strip of leather weights, in case an evening wants to be longer, for reasons no one has to defend. If sleep arrives, let it. We are in rooms that choose routine over surprise, keys that fit, bars that answer, lamps that balance light and air. When you return, the pool will still hold the sky, the broom will still remember its one good stroke, the shrine will still know its gentle gestures. The kitchen is not a hall of fire. It is a practical corner, a hearth of compact bricks under a hood that learned to listen to smoke. A small brazier handles most of the nights, thinking charcoal coaxed with a fan that does not believe in hurry. A pot sits wide and low with a lip that never tries to pour more than you ask. The cook salts by feel. He cracks a pinch of dried herb between finger and thumb and watches it go from proud to ready. He lifts a mortar whose inside carries sand in the clay mortarium so pepper and garlic will learn to be a paste without sharp voices. He grinds small circles. The pestle commends him. He sets it aside on a block where it accepts warmth without sulking. Bread for this house comes from the baker, like most bread in this city, but a hand mill lives under a shelf for evenings when barley wants to be a porridge. 2 stones, one turning, one patient, a handle that welcomes to hands, or one hand and one determined wrist. The meal comes out coarse and honest. A small jar holds honey, the color of late light. A clay lid sits over it with a leaf tucked under, to remind small wings to rest elsewhere. A bowl of oil stands ready, clear and quiet, wearing no perfume tonight. A mixing bowl, no grand name, holds water that remembers this afternoon's fountain. A line scratched inside the bowl says stop. The bowl stops. A copper pot warms wine with a softened ambition. The cook dilutes it, not by arithmetic, by the memory of evenings that went well. He sets a folded cloth on the pot's ear, where a hand will land later. He checks the brazier's ash with a dowel and draws ember toward edge toward ember, so heat will learn to walk even. Fire is not the point. Heat is the point, practiced into friendliness. In the corner, a loom stands with its weight sklay drops, hanging from a warp that remembers a rhythm even when hands are elsewhere. A distaff leans beside it, wool wound soft as weather. A spindle in a shallow dish that has kept its balance through many seasons. A woman takes the spindle and adds a breath to twist the strand, answers like a river learning to be a length of rope. She ties off with the knot that opens without spite. The loom weights settle into their old opinion of gravity. The thread becomes the promise of cloth you will not praise and will use every day. Good work accepts that fate. A boy sits near the impluvium and cuts a reed to length with a dull knife. He tests the reed in a small frame with cord's future shuttle for the loom. He rubs a bit of oil along its work edge so it will whisper and not scrape. He looks over his shoulder at the doorway lamps to see if they still hold their ovals. They do. He smiles for no one's benefit. The house lowers its voice one more degree. If you drift, you will not lose your place. The key will still be on the peg. The bar will still slide. The wick will still be the right length. The pot will not boil over because it has been taught not to. The loom will not tangle because its weights are patient. The house believes in you even when your eyes rest. Around the impluvium, air cools itself by remembering water. A small chain runs over a stone lip. A bucket knows how to descend without quarrel and come back with just enough. A girl ties a cloth over the pitcher's mouth. She sinks the pitcher to its shoulder in a tub of sand. She touches the sand and feels the story of the day turn mild. She sets a cup upside down on a shelf. Cups sleep better that way. No dust will think itself invited. Beyond the tablinum, the peristyle garden is a room of leaves and breath. A narrow reel carries water around a bed of herbs, parsley, rue, mint that refuses to be shy. A figure of a small god watches as if counting, not judging. A bench keeps the exact distance from the path, where a back rests without effort. A candle more flutters once, and then thinks better. A hand lifts, and does not need to wave. Night is a teacher, who does not like loud students. On the far side, a storage jar, the big kind, sunk half into earth, holds grain against impatience. Its neck carries a scratch. When the grain reaches the line, pouring stops. A lid sits over the mouth, great and heavy, with 2 small ears where a bar can hook. A ring set in the floor nearby holds sacks open, while someone slides grain down a board. The board has been sanded until the grain falls, but the board's temper does not. A cat examines the ring and decides it is a bed. Cats like circles, circles like cats. From the street, a soft scrape says someone is at the door. The porter lifts the bar from its brackets. The brackets agree with the choice and do not complain. He opens to a runner from the bath quarter, a boy with a laced shoe and dust the color of the last hour. The boy holds a string of clay discs with notches. He touches 3 discs, then 2, then points at a small bundle under his arm. Oil, wick, a strip of leather with cuts 4 lengths. The house owes a little, pays a little, thanks a lot. The boy swallows water 1 mouthful, not a gulp, nods, and returns to the cool street. The bar sits, the lock turns, the peg accepts the key. Each part enjoys the tiny ceremony. Upstairs, in the rooms that prefer darkness, cubicular beds hold the shape of the days, people before the day offers to leave. Frames are wood, joints taught to be honest. Cords strung in a firm grid breathe under a mattress stuffed with straw and a few stalks that carry the sun's memory into the night. A blanket folded once, a second blanket brought at winter's edge, a pillow that does not prefer to be proud. A hand tests the pillow, not to test, simply to admit that the hand has done enough for today. A shutter leans into its slot. The peg fits its hole because the hole expects it. Hinges make that nearly silent consent that older wood makes for people who remember to bring ash after oil. The room knows what to do when a lamp goes out. It becomes softer, not stricter. Beyond the shutter, a bucket sits by the stair with a small line carved inside and a ladle with 1 honest scoop. The vigils will pass in the night and check that bucket. They will look at the line. They will nod to themselves because nodding is the kind of praise the night likes. If sleep asks for company, we will leave you here between a door that does its job and a lamp that knows when not to. When you return, the straps will still hang with their stoppers facing out. The sandals will keep the buckle where a tired thumb can find it. The bed will still be your bed, a citizen of the house as well as your friend. In a corner where work hides from the eyes that deserve rest, a small repair table holds a few true tools. A file that knows the difference between patient and destructive. A pin punch that asks questions of metal without shouting. A length of cord that remembers every knot the house believes in. The steward's board leans nearby. He writes with the nail that refuses to be a pen. Key peg bar quiet lock slides lamp spared. Ovals wick 3rd notch half coals taut. Pot mindful mortar sand true mill circle honest gloom weight settled. Distaff thread kind pitcher cloth tied jar line respected bass. A runner paid bucket filled to mark. He draws a little square for the roof opening. A small beak for a lamp. A ring for the floor hook. He slides the board behind a cool stone where habit keeps it safe. The house goes to sleep by forgetting itself, 1 practice thing at a time. The shrine's lamp is pinched and covered. The broom leans with bristles off the floor, so they will not learn a bend. The city never ask for the keys rest where they always do. In the courtyard, the pool returns the last faint rectangle of sky. It is enough. A boy ties the last knot of the day, the one that opens without temper, even in the dark. He touches the knot, releases it to be sure, ties it again, smiles at the accuracy of ordinary things. Then he sleeps. Pocket pitcher to carry into rest. The impluvium holding night square paired doorway lamps, trimmed to a gentle oval, a bronze key on a peg. A wooden bar in brackets that forgive a lock slide, taught to be smooth, a hearth with quiet coals, a mortarium's gritty inside. A paste that learned to be honest, a hand mill turning. A jar with a scratch that ends the poorer limbs weights, leaning on gravity. A reed shuttle oiled to whisper, a storage jars. Heavy lid with 2 ears, a runner's notched clay discs, a bucket with a carved line, a bed that believes in your back. If your eyes close now, the house will keep your place. The door will remember to be a wall, the lamps will remember to be kind, the tools will remember what they are for. Rome will keep its habit of making rest out of craft, and you can rejoin it whenever the night wishes. The 6th part. The river teaches a city to breathe in long lines. Along the quay, rings set into stone hold rope that remembers the right diameter. A bollard looks like a mushroom with patience. A fender made from old rope sits where hole meets wall. A soft answer to the problem of weight. Water rises and falls against the steps with small opinions. A man kneels, waits a brush, and redraws the chalk mark that means today's low on a block that has collected quiet corrections for years. He wipes the brush on his palm and nods the river, and the stone have agreed on something ordinary and good. A barge noses in, not with ceremony, with practice. Oars feather, then stand. A line arcs, lands on the key, and a hook walks it to a ring. The bow kisses the fender like a polite guest greeting an old cushion. A capstan waits men set their bars, lean, and make a circle that never hurries. The rope tightens with the slow confidence of craft. The steersman raises a palm, the capstan stops at once. No calls, just hands. A wedge slides under a wheel and says, "Enough." Amphorae come ashore in pairs, balanced on a yoke that has learned a shoulder's shape. Their bellies are white with salt dust, their noses have been dipped in pitch, their necks carry scuffs that match a portage path rather than a story. A checker taps each with a knuckle, and hears the note of Faulis Amphorae speak in tone as coins do. Chalk strokes on the floor mark where pairs should stand before they learn the next movement. A small broom keeps stray grain away from the painted lines, no letters, only paths 4 feet and jars. Under the long roof of the horrier the storehouse air tastes like wood, dust, and promise. Pillars lift the roof, the floor rests on short piers, so air can pass under and carry off damp. Doors are wide enough for carts, but not laziness. A steward stands at a bench with a flat measure, the modious and honest basket that holds what it holds without wanting to be clever. He draws a board across the rim to level the grain. The grain accepts, makes its tiny dry hiss, and becomes exact. The steward lifts, pours into a sack held open by an iron ring with 2 ears. The sack gains a neck, a cord finds it's not the one that opens at the first good tug, and not the second. Lead seals lie in a shallow dish like grey beans. A boy threads one on a thin cord, folds it around the neck of the sack, and sets the seal into a small-jawed press. He closes the jaws and opens them again. The lead now carries a mark you do not need to read to recognize, 2 dents. A curve, a habit. He tugs. The seal stays. He smiles with the mouth closed, the way people do when a tiny thing behaves. Sealed sacks stack on sleepers' planks that make the floor behave like a polite friend and not a damp field. A cat explores, tail up, and discovers that sacks are beds. The steward permits this. Cats ask mice to be reasonable. If sleep arrives, let it. We are in cool shade, among rings set into stone, among baskets that measure without fuss, among seals that prefer obedience to explanation. When you return, the rope will still remember, which not forgives easily. The chalk line will still find the block's face. The modius will still be the square truth of the day. In the wine shed, jars you cannot lift live their underground lives, dahlia sunk up to the shoulder in packed earth. A narrow ladder leans against a beam, a man climbs with a ladle fixed to a pole. He skims the dolium surface, wants to taste whether last week's cloth did its work. The liquid answers, with no vinegary gossip. He wipes the ladle on a clean strip and replaces the cloth with a fresh one weighted by a ring of fired clay. A second jar keeps water cool, quiet drawn that morning from the fountain, and persuaded to forget the street by the simple trick of shade and stillness. The fish store along the quay keeps a bed of damp seagrass. Barrels of brine rest on blocks taps, are pins that twist with a polite insistence and stop like gentlemen. A salt man pushes his rake across a tray to keep the crystals from clumping. He holds a pinch between finger and thumb, feels how it yields, and knows whether to stir or to leave. He does not name this knowledge. He has had it longer than he has had certain friends. Outside, a boy runs the palm of his hand. A longer rope hung to dry the twist roughens his skin. A little his smile says the rope will learn to be kinder after one more day. Beyond the sheds, a square of open ground holds a pile of broken pottery that grew into a hill by deciding to be useful again. Sherds from old oil jar skins of transport after their inner lives were done break clean and stack like dark leaves. Men set them in layers, dry and tidy, and the ground thanks them. No words, just wait. A crow examines the topmost piece, studies its curve, and bows a little as if to a master it does not love but respects. At the quay's edge, a measuring post watches river level. Iron pegs set into stone mark heights by hand widths and by memory. At certain pegs, the city says send more to the baths, at others hold some for the fountains, at one tell the bakery wardens. A messenger does not need to be told which peg means what. He looks, nods, and leaves the way a good hinge works without teaching, without complaint. A light shows beyond the bend where the river remembers the sea. A beacon on a tower that does not brag about being a lighthouse. It turns oil into calm geometric consent. An oval of flame in a framed mouth, trimmed to the same length every evening by the same strip of leather notched for distances. On nights of fog, Hans of Forbidden's rope tells the story in stead lines cast from shore. Men walking the curve inward by hand, foot by foot. No shouts, only the soft order of knots and rings. If you drift, you will not fall behind. Grain will continue to learn humility in sacks on sleepers. Wine will keep its patience under cloth. Salt will remain an honest glue between trade and flavor. Rope will learn goodness by drying. Light will keep an oval on stone and water both. Carts squeak the kind of squeak that says, grease me tomorrow. Not now, and settle along a painted curb. Wheels are wedged axles touch a brush dipped in tallow and ash. Drivers unload in pairs, keeping weight close to backs and knees, not to opinion. A steelyard scale hangs under the eave, a single arm with sliding weighter counter that counts by distance rather than number. A sack leans in the hook, the weight creeps along the arm to the nick. That means this much is this much, and not a grain more. The keeper marks a tablet not with digits, but with strokes and small shapes, enough for the sums the day needs. On the river itself, a ferry ties off. To windows in its cabin shine, as if someone had leaned thought against glass. Passengers disembark with their day behind them and their evening in front. A woman carries a small oil jar with a leaf under the stopper. A man carries a coil of thin rope and a wooden hook. Their feet find the step that remembers the river's height. The key gives them back to the city without asking for thanks. Inside the horror, a small room keeps tools, shovels with ash handles that understand gripping hands, scoops bound with hide where wood meets iron, brooms that shed when new but learn discipline after a week of work. In a corner, a fire bucket sits filled to its scratch line. A watchman vigils touches the line with a finger as if testing a child's fever. The line is true. He sets a board back against the wall. He has carved a small wave near its top to mean keep calm. Unless this happens, a clerk sits where the light is best and copies circles and strokes onto a fresh wax. His style of writing would be illegible in a theatre and perfect in a storehouse. He hangs a string of pierced tokens on a peg, the kind with notches that make sense only to people who count with both hands and days. He slides one token along the string with his thumb from every cart that leaves. At dusk, he returns the string to a small box that closes with a wooden tongue. The box remembers to keep secrets, as all good boxes do. If sleep touches your shoulder, take its hand. Our place will not be lost. The beacon will still be an oval. The capstan will still stop when a palm rises. The seals will still hold without threatening anyone. The measured basket will still be exactly what it says it is. As night settles, air miraculously becomes cool between the jars and sacks. A cat relocates from the warm place under a shutter to the warmer place by a barrel side. A dog circles once and decides to become a coil, along ship size as its rope shift a finger's breadth. The river's voice takes one step down in pitch, then another. The hill of broken pottery lies awake and content it has already worked enough for one day by being there. The night archivist arrives by the rings and walks the length of the quay with the board he trusts not to impress anyone. He writes with the nail that never scratches stone. Ring sound fender set choclo marked capstan bar stopped at palm wedge under wheel amp repairs. Notes true sleepers dry modius level. Board on is seal biting cap patrol dolia cloth renewed tap pin turns. Stop sultrate. Pinch yields measure post peg at fourth hand beacon oval cart will grease tomorrow. Steelyard nick met bucket line kiss token slid box stungen. He draws a ring, a capstan, a small basket with a flat top, a seal with two dimples, pocket pitcher to carry into rest, a rope fender padded from old service, a ring in stone with a loop that opens kindly chalk on a key block at a level that means no one must wearing a capstan bar leaned against the drum amphora. Pairs on a yoke modius struck level by a comboard, a lead seal closing like a quiet mouse sack stacked on sleepers. Air moving beneath a dolium surface skims once, then covered as steel yards, sliding weight, arrested in a knicker beacon's oval held against fog a fire bucket with a scratched line filled to the mark, a small box with a wooden tongue protecting the string of notched tokens. If your eyes close now, grain will remain grain, wine will remain patient, the river will keep its path, and Rome will keep its habit of turning distance and waiting to sleep. The seventh part. Roads prefer agreements to adventures. Outside the gate, the crown of the pavement rises a finger and falls away to ditches that never ask for applause. Stones lie with their faces, taught to be neighbours. Polygonal pieces fitted until lines decide to be water's path rather than trouble's map. A curb holds the edge firm beyond it. Gravel learns to be quiet under sandals and carts alike. A milestone stands at the shoulder, a column with a blunt top, not speaking names tonight, only standing where distance becomes a habit instead of a brag. At dawn that thinks slowly, men walk the line. One carries a Groma cross on a pole with cords that hang plumb and thin as patience. He looks beyond the cords to a point set yesterday. He sets his feet, aligns and nods. The road continues being itself, straight when straight is kind, bending when bend is smart. Another checks camber with a board that holds a small dish of water in its middle. The water learns the center and tells the board where to shave, where to leave. A boy with a basket spreads sieves sand over a patch that has forgotten how to be level. A tamp lifts and falls with the rhythm of a heart not in a hurry. Waystone rings iron set low in curb wait for ropes, not drama. A cart halts, wheel wedges slip in with a soft decision. Axles accept a thumb of tallow rubbed with ash so tomorrow's squeak is delay, not complaint. Nails in the tire hobnails glint a little in the angle of light that makes distances honest. The driver lifts the yoke and checks the lever. Where it meets wood he fingers a crack and makes a note in his mind and nowhere else. He ties a quick release knot in the trace because men who travel like returning without arguments. A Mansio away station keeps the road from becoming a test. Its yard holds a trough with a line scratched on stone to measure fairness one bucket at a time. The stable floor is layered with clean sand brooms. In a rack know which way the bristles want to be useful. A stableman runs a hand down a horse's leg. If reading the skin tells him everything he needs. Harness hangs on pegs that don't pretend to be columns. Bits soak in a shallow pan. Oil riding on water like a promise to metal. A boy collects shoes pulled today. Saves the ones worth saving. Taps small nails out with a punch that says gentle without words. Inside, a desk by the gate holds wax tablets. A traveller arrives with a board and the seal a diploma that the road respects. The clerk warms the wax near a lamp until it is ready to accept a mark. Then presses the seal faintly, not to shout, only to remind the tablet who it belongs to. He draws a line and a little curve enough to show that horse and rider have become part of the day's order. He returns the diploma wrapped in a strip of cloth. Cords tie with that knot we trust, the one that opens on the first kind pull and not the third impatient one. If sleep arrives, let it. We are among rods and cords and trough lines, among pegs and quiet oil, among distances that prefer to be kept rather than conquered. When you return, the Groma will still hang its four small plumb lines north, south, east, west. The camber board will still hold its small dish of truth. The way station will still know how to trade a tired horse for a willing one without wakefulness. On the road again, the cursus publicus imperial post moves like water with rules. Riders change at places called mutations, not for amounts, 4 legs and lungs. A bell hangs by the stable door, half covered with leather, so sound is a suggestion. The hostler keeps Italian cuts on a stick, not numerals, a ladder of small memory. He scrapes a hoof on a stone lip to clear the last of last mile. The hoof approves. The stone pretends not to have a favorite. He checks the strap holes with a finger. The finger reports what the eye already knew today. The third hole is the best. Surveyors set out milestones every so often, every 1,000 paces, when a day liked neatness, a little less when the land preferred conversation. The stones do not brag about who ordered them. They stand where travelers can see, and where travelers can ignore without guilt. A traveller lays a hand on one and feels the day cool under skin, warmed by rains. He ties a message to the same hand with a thread and a seal, because the message deserves the same care as a sack of grain. He sets the seal with compressor and then tries to pull the thread. The seal holds. Relief is a small, correct exhale. Water crossings are where the road practices manners. Fords keep flat stone set, just proud of flow cutwaters on the sides of bridge piers, ask water to divide without sulking. Guard stones on the shoulders, carry iron rings, a rope runs from ring to ring, when height suggests caution. A woman on foot takes the rope lightly, not to lean, to agree. Her sandals find steps by memory borrowed from other people's feet. At the far side, she wipes water off her calf with a corner of cloth and smiles, because these small dignities are the whole point of engineering at the speed of walking. If you drift, you will not lose the road. It holds you like a sentence that knows its clauses. The ditch will still move water toward the place that accepts it. The curb will still keep gravel from inventing mischief. The mile will still be the mile that taught your knees what grace feels like. At a relay yard, harness lives on a bar and a rule. Straps never cross when they sleep, buckles face outward, to be found without eyes. Needles and awls sit in a roll of leather. Thread is waxed with something that smells like mornings. A jar of clean water hides under a shelf, a ladle rests across its mouth. Riders drink from the ladle, no more, no less, because riders who sleep badly ride badly. And the post does not like loose stories. On a corner table, a little pile of lead discs seals a gang weight beside a press with jaws like a patient mouth. A clerk threads a cord through two holes in a folded pass, sets a disc, closes the jaws, opens them, and checks that the two dimples and the curve look like the others on the string hanging by the window. He slides one disc along the string for each horse that leaves with authority's blessing. At evening, he will return the string to a box that closes with a wooden tongue that clicks, not loudly, correctly. The tongue's click is the sound of a system choosing to remember. The road skin needs kindness. Men with baskets of gravel find ruts, pour, tamp once, twice, stop. They do not fill to brim. They make firm, not proud. A curve of larger stones shows where previous hands decided that a spring under the slope wanted to argue the curve is there to translate, not to win. A ditch fails in one run because roots have learned ambition and matter cuts. A rake follows, water wanders forward again, relieved to have purpose. A bird lands on the milestone and gives the surveyor a look that says, "I could have told you to bend." The surveyor grins and walks a step to the left where the future line will be kinder. If you are far away for a while, the road will keep your place. The posts will change horses without needing your face. The bell will nod once with its leather hood, and then let silence be enough. The clerk will press lead into obedience, and will not wake anyone with pride. Evening stretches shadows along the verges. A cart travels in the soft hour, when wheels complain least. The driver loosens the check on the steel yard that hangs from the cart side, and weighs a sack because trust is a habit, not a feeling. He notes the nick where the puss settles and moves on. In the Mancio yard, the trough scratched line meets water exactly. Horses lower their heads, each is counted by ears rather than mouths. A lamp in a niche near the gate finds its oval and holds it. The wind decides to be a breeze, just makes its peace. In the corner of the yard, a little shrine to the god of boundaries, Nona. Out loud holds a small wreath of straw and to river stones. A hand sets a pinch of salt there, not a belief, a routine with gratitude in it. The clerk's penknife shaves a bit of wax from a tablet and smooths the cut with his thumb, as if telling the wax that air is in soft things forgive quickly. Beyond the yard, the milestone watches lanes of dark and lanes of pale trade places. The ditch slows its talk until it becomes a rumor that will still be true in morning. A pillow of grass near the curb invites a dog. The dog accepts, then forgets to guard and chooses to breathe. The road does not mind. Many guards keep watch here. Habits do most of it. The Night Archivist walks from gate to milestone with the board that holds no decoration. He writes with the nail that resists vanity. crowned true by water dish ditch cleared past willow roots curbstones reseated grown reliant to yesterday's point gravel poured, and tamped twice were wedges set axles tallow with ash, way rings sound trough line met harness pegs in order, buckles out bit soiled shoe saved too, nails tapped out diploma seal pressed neat cord knot that forgives bell hood on lead disc string counted, and returned boxed on click steel yard poise, at third nick rope guard line coiled forged stones, just proud cut water flow, split clean. He draws a cross for the gromer, a shallow bowl for camber, a ring for the trough, a tiny jawed press for the seal, pocket picture to carry into rest, a crown of stone that teaches rain to leave politely cords of the gromer hanging, still as thought the shallow dish of water in the camber board, level as a patient breath wheel wedges under a cart harness on pegs, buckles outward a trough with its scratched line touched by the day, a folded pass with a pressed disc that does not shout, a string of lead seals on a peg by a window, a box with a wooden tongue that knows when to stop a rope, guard line running between iron rings at a ford, milestones standing like quiet calmers in a long sentence. If your eyes close now, the mole will keep its length, the horse will keep its temper, the post will keep its pace, and Rome will keep its road, the calm instrument that turns here into there without waking anyone. The eighth part. Water travels in sentences the city learned to read. Beyond the walls, arches walk the valley with a patient rhythm, carrying a channel speaker slined in pink mortar that leaves a soft sheen on your fingertips. The gradient is shy, a hand's breadth over many paces, enough to keep water from arguing with itself. A keeper walks the crown with a pole whose end carries a small float. He lowers it into a stilling box and watches the circle steady. He makes a chalk dot on the pole and, beside it, a second dot from last week. The dots agree. He smiles as if a friend had kept a promise. At the foot of the hill, the stream enters the Castellum Aqui, the settling tank where noise becomes thought. Water arrives by one mouth, rests, then departs by three. Each outlet is a rectangular throat in stone, its lips squared with a mason's pride, its opening tuned not by prayers, but by sighs. The keeper slides in a thin board to narrow one throat, a finger's worth. The board has a notch that remembers tomorrow. Sediment learns to sleep at the tank's floor. A boy with a long-handled rake draws it toward a sump, lets it climb out of water like a docile animal, and empties it into a low barrow whose ears welcome a rope. No speeches, only a clean path. Lead pipes fistulae wait in a rack like instruments. Each bears a gentle flare at one end, not to shout, to fit a sleeve. The sleeves rest in a basket with cloths that know how to keep grip from ambition. A man warms a seam with a shovel of coals, feeds in a thread of solder, and seals sleeve to socket. He rubs the seam with chalk and leather, then presses the joint with two careful thumbs. No stamp tonight, only the sound a joint makes when it has decided to be one thing, not two. He sets the pipe on a channel bed hammered smooth and leaves it to learn the fall. If sleep arrives, let it. We are among arches that do not hurry, among lips of stone tuned by hands, among pipes that prefer consent to struggle. When you return, the float will still find its circle, the chalk dots will still be cousins, the throat will still let just enough pass, and not more. Within the city, a fountain makes order visible. Its basin is low and wide, rim-rounded where shoulders lean. Bronze spouts a lion here. A plain mouth there sends sheets thin as silk, not to dazzle, to serve. A steward tests pressure with a cup. He holds it under a spout for account that ends when a certain quiet weight touches his palm. He adjusts a valve with one half turn. The sheet thickens. He nods. Children are shown how to lift water without making water forget itself. Cups come out down on shelves when done. A small grate over the drain takes leaves, like a polite clerk accepts errands. Branch lines in alleys have their own opinions. A tap at a corner runs for a baker's trough in the grey hours later. It feeds a dyer's barrel that holds colour. A washerwoman ties a cloth over her jar's mouth, lowers the jar to its shoulder in a tub of sand, and lets the damp learn coolness the way jars do. A boy with a wax tablet notes, third valve 2 wells now, with a curve and a stroke that future him will read without argument. He puts the tablet back in a niche that keeps shade around more faithfully than most rooms. Under the paving, a channel learns dignity by being unseen, where the tube descends to meet a siphon. A standpipe rises to invite air and discourage moods. A bronze cock turned a quarter remembers to turn back the same way. A leather washer greased with tallow and ash never calls attention to itself. At a corner, a sluice can be lifted with a hook to rinse the line. A screen upstream asks twigs to wait and then changes its mind twice a day. When a man with a brush makes slow vertical strokes, it does not matter that no one claps. Screens prefer respect to applause. In the laundry quarter, a larger basin begins as an empty mirror under the sky and becomes a brimming promise by afternoon. The level climbs past a scratch in the plaster. Stop here for shirts, higher for blankets. To men bring a frame covered in coarse cloth and lay it across trestles. They pour water over wrung textiles and let it run back. The basin's lip hosts 3 clay lamps. At dusk, their ovals put gold on water without trying. A cat tastes the air, decides not to be curious, and circles the rim like a priest of ordinary things. If you drift, you will not lose the water. The arches will keep walking. The throats will keep their size. The spouts will keep their sheets thin and even. The drains will keep the day's errors from becoming tomorrow's complaints. The city knows how to hold water in its open hand. Up valley, where the aqueduct drinks from stone, a spring chamber captatio waits in the green. Its inner walls shine with opus signinum, mortar flecked with shards that taught it to resist stories told by water and time. A lid fits its mouth with a humility that lets air pass. A keeper lowers a lamp, then a reed measure marked with little shelves. He reads not numbers, habits. First shelf kissed after winter rain, second in late spring, third only when a god is bored or merciful. He writes nothing tonight. He knows the shelves by touch. He sets a laurel leaf by the lid because leaves teach small wings manners. Where the line crosses a valley, the speakers become stone above stone. An arcade, its work the opposite of pride. Soft wedges tap between blocks, not to lift, to keep edges honest. Joints share a thin line of mortar and a thicker agreement. A worker with a broom of heather sweeps the crown. The broom leaves the crown itself, removes what would argue with the flow. He looks along the channel and sees the day slide away. He likes that. Back in town, a nymphaeum fountain with a facade turns function into memory without breaking the rule against noise. Shell niches hold simple jars, no faces to read. Water rises in a thin veil and falls into a long trough where jars learn to brim and stop. A woman teaches a girl the habit of resting the jar's lip on the rim before the last finger's weight is added. The girl copies exactly. The habit will move to her hands and live there for decades. Even the drains have their evening. A man lifts a slab, steps down, and walks a tunnel that has its own lamplight. He scrapes a sill where silt pretended to be a ledge. He lifts a flap where a scent of marsh wants to visit. He sets it back. He comes up and puts the slab down so it lies like a sentence that knew how to end. He washes his hands at the fountain, not because the city orders it, because the water makes him like himself better. If you wake and wonder, we are in the square with the fountain, at the tank with the throats, beside the arch where chalk dots agree, near the spring with shelves polite to seasons. You can rejoin us anywhere the city chooses to be reasonable with water. Reasonableness is this city's favorite ritual. The night archivist walks the length from arch foot to fountain lip with the board that looks like wood and is wood. He writes with the nail that avoids decoration. Gradient true, by float crown swept mortar pink, sheen unbroken castellum sediment drawn throat narrowed, one finger board notched for tomorrow, sleeve solder taken. Seam press standpipe breathing cock quarter turn, then quarter back screen brush twice basin lip rounded. Lamps in pairs trough line met for shirts. Higher for a blanket's tablet third valve, 2 wells return to niche spring first shelf kissed laurel underlid arcade wedges set nymphaeum veil, even slab lifted, and set hands washed. He draws a shallow box for the tank with 3 throats. A short line with 2 dots for chalk agreement. A little pipe with a sleeve. A standpipe with its small mouth. Pocket pitcher to carry into rest. Arches walking a valley, a settling tank, where water rests, and chooses a thin board with a notch teaching a throat to be humble, a pipe sleeve called to one thing, a fountain rim worn to softness, by shoulders and jars, a steward's cup filling to a weight that speaks, a screen brushed with patient strokes, a spring chamber with shells of season, a nymphaeum's veil, a lifted slab, and a tunnel that prefers order to drama, a laurel leaf under a lid, paired lamps making water gold and gentle. If your eyes close now, water will go on remembering its path. The city will go on remembering how to greet it. Rome will continue to turn flow into sleep, and you can meet it again wherever the next spout makes its quiet arc. The ninth part. Bread is a quiet triumph you can hold. Before dawn has an opinion. The mill room breathes like a patient animal. To stones stand together, a lower one that never moves, and an upper one shaped like an hourglass turned on its head. Would arms fit into sockets near the top? A mule walks a circle with the posture of someone who knows all the day's jokes already. Grain descends from a bin by a small door, not a cascade, a practice thread. Between the stones, kernels learn humility. They leave us meal with a softness that makes hands like themselves better. A miller watches where meal falls into a chest. He rubs a pinch between finger and thumb and listens. Not to sound, meal has almost none to the way it yields. He opens a shutter a finger's width. The mule stops at a word he has heard every morning since he was a name without letters. The miller sets a bowl under the spout and adds water to make a paste. He smears it on the stone's face, looks 4 lines where paste refuses, where refusal appears. He will dress the stone later with a pick so shallow it feels like a courtesy. He pats the mule and speaks to the day. Sacks of flour rest on trestles, never on the floor. A boy ties their necks and presses a little disc of lead on a cord. The pressed jaws meet and open with the same modest click they gave the last time and the time before that. He pulls the cord the seal holds. He sets the sack on a board with 2 shallow rails. Rails keep round things from deciding to roll. The board lives on a low cart whose wheels have learned to be quiet with a little tallow and the habit of not rushing. In the next room, water waits in a jar to its scratch line. The jar drinks from a fountain at first light, then learns to keep cool with a cloth. Salt rests in a covered bowl. The lid wears a laurel leaf under its knob. A jar of sour yesterday's memory of yeast sits with a soft skin at its surface and a smell that reminds walls of fruit. The baker's hands enter flour the way a ferry enters a harbour, without surprise, at the right angle, with promises kept. He digs a well, pours water, wakes the sour, pinches salt between knuckle and thumb, and brings edges to centre, until the bowl transforms from dust and rumour to something that decides to be one. The bench is not smooth, it is honest. Its surface has been scraped and oiled. A scatter of flour makes it agreeable. Dough comes out of the bowl and meets the bench with the confidence of a practiced greeting. Hands fold, push, turn, pause. The sound is low, like a page turning. The baker closes his fingers, presses his heels, and lets time take some of the labour, because dough teaches that not all progress is pressure. A linen lives beside the bench, floured lightly. He lays it over, tucks the edges in the way nurses tuck corners in rooms that expect gratitude. If sleep arrives, let it. We are among circles and patience stones that turn, cords that seal, bowls with lines, hands that fold and pause. When you return, the mule will still choose the right pace, the seal will still accommodate truth, the linen will still forgive flour, and the bench will still carry the day's first kindness. By the oven, fire does its work without theatrics. The mouth is a low arch, the floor inside is brick taught to be level. The baker slides a cold pan in, draws it out, then mops the floor with a damp cloth on a pole. Steam rises, apologizes, and disappears. He lifts a proofed mass and weighs it in his hands, the way people weigh fruit when they are deciding nothing in particular. He divides with a stretched cord 1 pull, 2, 3, then shapes rounds that learn tension with a gentle drag against the board. He presses a little stamp into each, a mark not of pride, of responsibility. The mark says, "This came from here." The way a door says, "This is our house," without believing itself famous. Banneton's baskets for proving line a shelf, dusted with flour that has decided to become polite. Dough rounds nest linen folds over them, a thought that means well. When a round has risen enough to make a finger's poke fill slowly, and then stop, the peel long-handled and plain becomes a bridge. The baker flourishes no flour. He slides, lifts, carries, and sends the loaf onto hot floor with a push that looks like agreement. Scores across the top open, not to show off, to give the loaf a ritual path to widen. On a side table, a water clock counts in a way that matters to bread. A jar with a small hole that's a slow thread. Fill a bowl marked inside with 3 shelves. At the first shelf, rounds are divided at the second. Baskets are covered at the third. The fire is told to rest. The clock never argues. It permits course corrections without gossip. The baker rubs the tip of his finger in a dish of oil and touches a hinge on the oven door. The hinge thanks him by not squeaking when neighbors sleep. The smell that enters the lane is not a trumpet, it is a nod. People begin to appear with small tokens on cords, pieces of clay with cuts, and curves that the baker reads by touch more quickly than by eye. He slides finished loaves onto a board, knocks the bottom with a practiced knuckle hollow answers, and lays them on the counter. He holds a loaf up to his cheek to feel its heat, not because a cheek knows more than a hand, but because ears and bread agree about temperature. He swaps token 4 loaf and ties a loop in the cord that opens easily later. He likes watching knots behave. If you drift, the room will keep baking. The water clock will continue allowing. The peel will continue serving. The stamp will keep making quiet responsibility. Heat will keep being the kind that persuades rather than conquers. Behind the oven, an oil lamp squad stands at attention. Wicks trimmed to a length, the leather strip approves. Beaks wiped of carbon, bowls filled to a line scratched by a past hand. The baker lifts one and sets it in a niche near the door when sky is still indecisive. Oval light makes boards honest. He will pinch the flame closed later with 2 fingers and a wet cloth. A pinch is a promise, not a punishment. Nearby, a simple scale to pans and a beam weights for fairness. The weights are metal, but a small stone lives in the drawer 2 stones. In fact, because one is useful and one is courteous. People like to touch a weight and then touch a stone. They remember that the stone is older and the weight is obedient. Both truths help bread enter hands without songs about destiny. On the beam, a notch holds today's truth about a small loaf. Another notch holds the larger. The beam levels and everyone is calmer. Flour returns in bags between mornings. It arrives with seals, rests on sleepers, and takes its turn. The boy who sealed in the mill also opens here. He sets the old seal in a dish. The dish becomes a string later. The string becomes a pattern. Patterns become trust. No speeches, no badges, only dimples in lead, and the memory of fingers. By late morning, the mule rests, the stones rest, and the oven learns quiet heat for pies and simple dishes. A woman brings a tray with onions and olives and a little cheese, asks the baker to find a place at the mouth. He does, and sets a tile under the tray so bottom does not race ahead of top. He draws a mark with chalk near the tile to say turn at this many breaths, because words would make this slower. She leaves with a smile that includes the world, and the baker adds a strip of wood to the fuel. Not because the oven asked, because hospitality is a craft too. On a hook, a broom made of bound twigs keeps its dignity. The baker sweeps crumbs into a pan with a lip that learned not to spill on corners. He empties the pan into a bean that goes to chickens, and the chickens return the favor later in their way. He wipes the board with a cloth. You cannot make clean anymore, but can make faithful. He hangs the cloth by a corner to admit air and discourage fragrance from becoming history. If you wake and wonder, we are at the millstones, at the bench, at the oven's mouth, at the counter where stamps touch crust, at the scale where beam levels. You can rejoin us at the smell of bread or the sound of the peel of the little click of a seal press closing on a cord. All are invitations, none are alarms. The night archivist arrives late enough that crust has cooled, but early enough to believe in tomorrow's dough. He writes with the nail that does not scratch flour, Mule paste stones face to be dressed at noon. Lol mere yield soft. Shutter opened, one finger sack sealed. Rails remembered, jar filled to line, sour oak, salt pinched, fold bench oiled. Linen flowered, fire floor mopped. Hinge oiled, water clock, first shelf divide, second cover. Third rest stamp impressed, scores obedient, peel bridge tokens traded, beam level at large, and small notch lamp oval, true crumbs swept. Pan honest, bin chickens owed, seal dimples collected, string pattern kept. He draws to stones that meet, a peel blade, a stamped loaf with 4 lines, a small beam with 2 pans, pocket picture to carry into rest. The mule's circle marked by quiet hoof, the hourglass stone sharing its comb with grain, a pinch of meal rubbed and understood, a jar filled to a scratch. The linens fold relaxing over dough like a merciful thought, the oven's floor washed and ready, a peel under around. Then back empty, a little stamp in the palm, and then on the loaf the beam's tongue. Level between pans, a token on a cord trading for warmth, a dish of spent seals, a broom, and a crumb pan, a chalk breath mark by a tray that will turn when it is time. If your eyes close now, bread will continue to become itself. Knots will open kindly, stamps will remind, not boast, and Rome will keep its habit of making comfort out of practice, one round at a time. The 10th part. Heat done kindly is a kind of courtesy. The baths begin before day remembers itself. A door opens on a room of benches, pegs, and sandals that learn their owner's weight long ago. The apoditarium changing room keeps order the way a good shelf keeps bowls. Pegs face outward, each has a shallow notch near its end, so straps do not invent adventures. A boy carries a basket of small clay tags with holes. He loops a tag onto a strap when a guest hands over a purse, then slides a twin tag onto a peg. Twins prefer not to be separated. The boy enjoys making them behave. Light falls from above through a square of glass that softens glare into milk. Along one wall, a stone counter holds small flasks of oil. They sit in a water bath to keep their temper. Caps are stoppers wrapped in cloth and tied with a knot that opens before it argues. A man tests a flask on the back of his hand. He nods and returns it to the water without urgency. In a bowl, strigils, curved scrapers of bronze rest on linen, not to shine, to stay kind to skin. A clerk wipes each with a rag dipped in warm water and a breath of wine. Not a sterilization ritual with speeches, only the knowledge of metal, cloth, and the day. If sleep arrives, let it. We are among pegs that remember straps, flasks that meet wrists, and pairs of clay twins that tell a simple story. This with that, here now, later together again. When you return, the glass will still share its milk light. The oil will still be the correct warmth. The tags will still prefer their proper companions. Beyond the changing room, warmth begins to talk in the tepidarium. The floor lies on a forest of short pillars, pile so air can pass under and teach stone a calm lesson. Walls swallow heat through clay box flues tubally that rise like secret chimneys. A door closes softly and the room keeps a secret. Heat will be even here. Benches are wide enough for friendship and narrow enough to discourage speeches. A steward touches the floor with the back of his hand. It answers with agreement, not pride. He adjusts a vent with a wooden paddle. The paddle's handle remembers where to sit when no one needs it. On a table, a sandglass counts for the distracted. Not a command, only a reminder that long is good and too long is less good. A man pours a thread of oil into his palm, rubs his hands together until they forget they are hands and become warmth, and draws a slow line along a shoulder that has done enough this week. A strigil follows, not to scrape, to persuade. The bronze edge collects oil and spent dust. The linen fulfills its job and becomes dignified. Two friends speak in the tone people save for places that prefer quiet. Their words are not about victories. They are about a hinge that behaved, a vine that learned a trellis, a toddler who found sleep without a struggle. In the coldarium, heat gentles bones. The Olveus hot pool holds a low lip that likes to meet forearms. A man sits and watches ripples decide things among themselves. The steam room beyond sudatorium breathes like a small animal in winter. Stone seats rise in steps. Water thrown on a platter makes a sound that keeps time without counting. A boy moves a broom of herbs through bay, a little mint through air, and then rests it on hooks that understand damp. A jar of snow from last night's shade floats in the basin. The jar is not a drama. It is a promise that the frigidarium will feel like a fact. Fire starts far away from these rooms. In the furnace the Profernium werewood learns patience. The stoker's day is not shouting, it is reading ash. He feeds the mouth with billets the length of his forearm, because that length earned its authority over the years. He taps the floor of the channel with a rod. The rod tells him where ash has decided to stop being helpful. He rakes once and walks away. The heat will travel through underfloors and clay boxes to where it belongs. It does not need encouragement. It needs steady hands and clean paths. If you drift, warmth will remain. The floor will keep the lesson it was given. The benches will hold their exactness. The strigils will rest on linen until called. The water will remember its levels, tepid for conversation, hot for forgiveness, cold for clarity. In the frigidarium, water waits in a pool that learned brightness from the sky. Its rim is rounded, where shoulders lean. The bottom carries a mosaic that reveals itself slowly to people who are not chasing it. A man steps down and makes a small noise he did not plan. It is not a protest. It is a welcome tinged with surprise. He submerges, rises, and remembers his spine. He steps out and sits on cool stone, runs a cloth along his arms to do what air would do in time. A girl delivers cups of water without being asked. The cups do not have handles. They want to be held. At the far end, a shaving seat waits near a window that honors light but keeps it gentle. A barber sharpens a small blade on a leather that knows its job. He rinses it in a bowl that catches the day and returns it later to the drain, respectful, without messages. Soap is oil and ash trained to lather. He works under a jawline with the care of someone who believes in tomorrow's throat. He dabs a wool ball in a bowl of cool water and taps the skin where the blade was just polite. No cologne. The room smells clean because it has learned how to smell like itself. Attendants move like people who have known the floor 4 years, quiet, unstartled, accurate. They play sandals with straps facing outward, 4 toes to find, not inward to invite fumbling. They set a folded cloth on a bench where someone will need it. They pick up a cup whose place is not here. The cup forgives and goes where cups belong. The cushions are firm, their covers are linen with a weave you can count if you are the sort of person who counts. Counting is optional here. Breathing, inevitable. A notice board near the entrance holds no speeches and no orders, only 3 symbols and a line. The symbols are the bath's hours, a rising sun, a high sun, a low sun. The line is a rule about sandals on wet floors. It is not a rule to prevent disaster. It is a rule to prevent small inconveniences from turning into stories that interfere with sleep. If you wake and wonder, we are at the peg wall with twin tags. In the tepidarium, where bronze and linen perform kindness in shifts. At the furnace, where a man reads ash like a book. In the frigidarium, where mosaic fish do not move, yet manage to convince the eye that they might. You can rejoin us at any bench. The heat will be waiting without reproach. The Night Archivist comes at the hour when steam forgets to boast. He writes with the nail that respects moisture. Pegs twins paired glass milk light good oil water bath right strigils wiped linen clean cloths folded tepidarium pile clear. Tubally breathing vent paddle. 1 notch sandglass stone twice coldarium lip kind. Steam plate quiet broom herbs rested snow jar floated furnace billets forearm length. Ash raked channel tapped frigidarium rim rounded. Mosaic whole cup snow handles. Carried barber leather true. Blade rinsed. Wool ball cool sandals straps outward notice hours by sun. Sandals line respected. He draws a little arch of pile under a slab. A box flue climbing. A curved strigil on linen. A pool rim with a fish tile. Pocket picture to carry into rest. Clay twins on a peg, a flask tested on a wrist bronze strigils, resting on folded linen warm benches with even heat, the sandglass quiet neck, the hot room's oval pool, a broom of herbs catching steam, and then hanging the furnace mouth breathing with discipline, the cold pool's rounded rim. A foot on its first step, a shaving blade crossing a quiet cheek sandals, presented easy to enter a sign with 3 small suns, a cup of water, held without a handle. If your eyes close now, heat will keep being gentle, cold will keep being clear, and Rome will keep the custom of making bodies and rooms agree before night. The 11th part. Houses keep weather at arm's length and friendship at hand. A door opens on a small stone that asks solace to remember where outside ends. The threshold is slightly proud of the street, not enough to boast, enough to keep rain from inventing stories in the hall. On the inside, a bolt runs in an iron shoe. Its mouth has been taught with tallow and ash to accept the bolt without opinions. A key with 3 simple wards turns and does not click, it nods. Above, a small lamp rides in a niche and draws an oval on plaster, the color of bread. The atrium holds a square of sky. The compluvium's lip is rounded, where people set elbows and watch the first drops decide to be a thread. Water falls into the impluvium, a shallow basin where a jar's mouth rests on a smooth stone to fill itself without splashing. The jar's shoulder carries a cord. The cord knots, the way a fairy ties up quick to forgive. A woman checks the cistern cover. Board, ring, weight. The ring tilts politely to fingers. The board lifts without complaining. The weight leans against the hinge, a way that respects both gravity and backs. Brooms lean in a corner, bristles up so they remember dignity. A shoe scraper near the door hosts a film of dust that has decided to be polite. It will not ride into rooms today. Sandals find their places under a bench, straps outward 4 toes to locate without thought. A child sets a basket of figs on the table with the addition of a leaf under the top fruit. The leaf is not a garnish, it is a kindness to skins. A strip of cloth lies over a bowl to keep the house out of the bread and the bread out of the house. If sleep arrives, let it. We are among thresholds that remember rain, among jars that prefer a smooth stone, among keys that know how to be quiet. When you return, the bolt will still travel without debate. The lamp will still keep its oval. The cistern ring will still tilt with a small courtesy. The kitchen holds the day's last small flame banked under ash. A pot rests on a trivet that lifts it just enough to avoid teaching the floor the wrong lesson. A spoon lies across the pot's mouth, bowl down, so steam greets wood instead of the air. A bunch of herbs hangs from a peg, bay, thyme, a little fennel. Their shadows make a soft lattice on the wall. A clay lamp stands near the hearth, its wick trimmed to a length that keeps a bead, but not a beard of flame. Oil in its belly reaches a line scratched by a patient thumb any evenings ago. On a shelf, a set of small weights sits in a row, each with a tiny ear for a pin. Beside them, a stone that does no weighing at all, but sits to remind weights that the world was heavy before copper learned arithmetic. A beam scale rests on hooks, its tongue meets the notch that says fair. Coins live in a shallow bowl under a cloth. No emperor's faces tonight, just circles of promise with an agreed upon edge. A woman touches a coin to the weight, then to the stone, and smiles at the silly perfection of correct things. In a corner, a warp-weighted loom leans against the wall like a quiet ladder. Clay lozenges hang from threads, keeping them straight by being themselves. A hand slides the shed rod and passes a shuttle through the mouth. The threads make together. The shuttle does not hurry. It knows that fabric is the result of patience from 2 directions, not 1. A comb made from bone straightens weft without sharpness. The cloth acquires a habit of surface, the slight grain that fingers will recognize as home when nights are cool. If you drift, the house will continue maintaining itself. Ash will protect ember. Oil will remember not to flood a wick. Weights will wait. Cloth will grow another breast's width. Doors will be doors and not pronouncements. In a small room farther back, a chest holds things a day does not need now. Its lid has a tongue of wood that slides into a mouth and stops there with the correctness of good grammar. Around the hasp, a cord runs once, twice, and accepts a lead seal pressed with a simple marker curve and to dimples, a pattern this family keeps like a lullaby. A girl peers at the seal and touches it, not to doubt, to memorize. She will open it tomorrow and tie it again, and press and smile, because she joined a system that likes her. Beds are ropes and patience. The frames hold laths over them. Cords run in a lattice that has opinions about sagging. A hand finds the knot where tightening happens and chooses one more pull. The mattress is straw that remembers rain fields but agrees to be a bed. A sheet, linen, call a blanket, woven like the loom's promise in another room. A pillow holds chaff and the notion of clouds for people who know clouds always end up as water anyway. Window shutters close themselves with a bar that listens. The bar sits in a cradle carved to keep it from wandering where air wants to visit. A lattice holds pots with basil and rue plants teach breeze to carry a better story. In the courtyard, a jar with a narrow neck stands in a sand bed. The sand is damp to the wrist. The jar cools itself by forgetting warmth slowly. The Night Archivist will write jar in sand, and it will be enough for anyone who knows jars. The room where light and pen meet keeps a small desk angled to the world. Wax tablets lie under a cloth, a stylus rests across them. Its point clean, its flat end willing to erase what needs erasing without insult. A tally stick with cuts, like small steps, leans in a cup that used to hold rosemary. A cord with knots, a counting string hangs on a peg, knots face outward, so fingers understand without looking. An oil lamp sits on a saucer that catches what the lamp forgets. The saucer's rim carries 3 scratches to say where the lamp should sit, 1 for reading, 1 for writing, 1 for listening to a storm. Tonight the lamp sits at listening. If you wake and wonder, we are in the atrium with the square of sky, in the kitchen with the banked fire, by the loom with its weighted patience, at the chest with its small seal, near the bed where ropes accept one last courtesy of the day. You can rejoin us where the threshold is slightly proud of the street, or where the jar's neck catches a thread of water without splash. Houses are generous that way. At the back, the little room of washing has a basin set into a slab. A jug pours, hands meet cool water that has been taught not to surprise. A strip of linen waits to be a towel. A second to be a curtain for modesty in a place that keeps modesty simple. A plug carved from wood sits beside the drain and fits because someone shaved it, tried it, shaved it, tried it, and decided to stop, not to when it looked beautiful, but when it behaved. Above the door, a small bell without clapper hangs beside a ring. The bell is for dusting, the ring is for a cord. If someone outside tugs the cord twice, the ring makes a dull note against wood. Inside, a hand lifts the bar and asks, who? Not with words, with absence of refusal. People who knock at night in this neighborhood tend to be neighbors. The house chooses to believe this until evidence tells a better story. Evening collects itself. The oval on the wall from the niche lamp grows rounder, then rests. The impluvium reflects a square of late sky and one small star. A cat inspects the water, disapproves of reflections, and leaves to sit where warm bricks remember the oven's work. A dog in the lane sighs and becomes geometry. Someone pulls a curtain slowly. Someone else folds a cloth in half, and then a quarter, because that is how you fold cloth. Nothing urgent happens. Everything precise happens. The Night Archivist arrives at the threshold and stands until his eyes learn the inside. He writes with the nail that refuses to boast. Bolt tallow, ash, smooth keyboards, kind lamp, oval, true compluvium lip, rounded impluvium jar mouth, on smooth stone system, ring tilts, board lifts, weight rests, shoe straps outward, leaf, under fig cloth over bowl, hearth ember banked, trivet set, lamplight met, weights row. Ears good, stone present, bean tongue, level coins under cloth, loom weight straight, shuttle patient, comb bone, chest cord twice, seal press curve, dimples, bed rope tightened, straw honest shutter bar in cradle, window lattice, herbs jar stood in damp sand, desk tablets under cloth, stylus clean, cord knotted lamp at listening, washroom plug, shaved to fit, bell without clapper, dusted ring for cord, sound dull, correct. He draws a threshold stone a little proud, a key with 3 wards, a jar neck against a smooth stone, a loom weight, a sealed cord, pocket pitcher to carry into rest. The proud threshold, the bolt travelling like a promise kept, the niche lamp's oval, the square of sky becoming a square of water, the jar's mouth on a smooth stone, the weight that does no weighing, standing among weights, the loom's hanging lozenges, the chest's small seal with 2 dimples, the bed's tight knot, the jar in sand, the stylus across the tablets, the wooden plug beside the drain, the ring near the bell that makes only the correct dull note. If your eyes close now, the house will hold its shape. Water will wait where it should. Cloth will forgive faults. Keys will be quiet. And Rome will keep its manner of making rest out of rooms. The 12th part. The river carries the city's patience in slow folds. At the quay, mooring rings rest in stone and wear a sheen of tallow that spares rope from learning pain. A barge noses in, its deck quiet with sacks and jars that have decided to travel well together. A bollard accepts a turn of rope, the knot is the one that opens without explaining itself. The helmsman's palm finds the coil's last loop and lays it down flat, so no foot will find a lesson it did not ask for. A crane with a treadwheel stands like a polite animal trained to lift and set. Inside the wheel, a man walks his circle the way a mule does, not to hurry, to be correct. The hook takes a sling under a cluster of sacks. The wheel turns, the rope learns purpose, the load rises without commentary, then drifts toward a cart with sides that know how to be patient. A boy below steadies the swing with a line. He does not pull hard, he suggests. The hook sighs its load onto wood. The sling comes loose with a twitch that anyone can love. On the quay, a marker scratched into stone says, where cart wheels prefer to stand. A steward checks a sack's mouth and finds a cord sealed with a disc. He touches the disc to a string of old discs hanging from a peg on his board. Dimples and curve. Dimples and curve. The pattern agrees. He lifts a small auger and draws a thin curl from the sack side. Grain spills into his hand. He lifts it to his cheek. Then to his ear. Grain tells its temper by how it lands and how it stays. He lets it fall into a sieve like a small rain that doesn't wake anyone. He nods once, sets the auger's plug back in, presses it with thumb, and ties a fresh cord and a fresh disc, so this sack will belong to the day as truly as to the field. If sleep arrives, let it. We are among rings and ropes, slings and seals, among wheels that lift with kindness and hands that check by touch. When you return, the knot will still be the one that opens. The disc will still keep its quiet pattern. The crane will still accept walking as a way of lifting. In the hurry of the granary's air learns to move like a careful guest. Doors face each other, so a breeze can read the room. Floors rest on short piers, leaving a crawl of air below to remind grain that dampness has no future here. A broom of heather leans by the door, its bristles trained to carry dust toward the morning and away from the sacks. Cats practice their profession without speeches. A jar of barley sits where cats like to sit. Agreement has been reached. A clerk passes, and the cat does not move. That is the agreement. Inside, dully a big jar sunk to their shoulders hold oil and wine and sometimes stories that do not need words. Their rims are wiped with a cloth that lives for wiping rims. Along a wall, amphorae rest in a rack. Each shows a ring of capacity inside its neck, a shallow scratch that says here and no more. A girl filling one turns to the scratch and not to the daydream that visited her. The scratch wins. The jar wears a film of oil on its lip to make the stopper love its job. The stopper fits. The cord ties. The seal accepts regulation without becoming a character. A tally stick records arrivals, not names, not fame. Only cuts long, short, short, long and a notch across to say 100. The stick lives with a twin. The twins agree when they meet again. Clay tablets are thick with the day's small curves. A stylus makes marks that are easier to wipe than to argue about. When a cart leaves for the bakery quarter, a token travels with it, a piece of fired clay with a mark that lives in the baker's palm already. The cart creaks with a sound that implies honesty. Wheels are greased where wood meets iron, and wedges travel in a niche on the cart side, ready to teach a slope humility. At the river lip, a checker's rod dips in a jar of water and draws a single drop across a grain of wheat. If it clings too long, the rod writes air in his mind, and he nods toward open doors. If it falls in the right amount of time, the rod writes store, and the sacks pass into shadow. Nothing is shouted. In this building, silence is a tool. If you drift, the horror will keep breathing. The piers under the floor will keep remembering why they stand. The cats will keep their rounds. The capacity rings will hold their little logic. The tally stick will wait for its twin. The crane's wheel will rest with its dignity folded like a good cloak. By the water, a small shed keeps tools with names that do not need to be said aloud. There are fenders woven from rope so old it has become wisdom. There are hooks that lift only sacks. Never people, there is tallow with ash for rings and bolts. There are spare cords already knotted, the way the key prefers. A boy knows which cord belongs to which job by the feel of the twist, not the color. He reaches without looking and does the right thing because fingers can be scholars too. The Anona office, the grain allowance lives across the yard. A window with iron bars serves as a mouth that speaks fairness. People present tokens and leave with assurance. The clerk weighs not pride, only entitlement. He sets a standard weight on a beam and lets the pan teach the difference between wish and measure. A woman touches the rim of the pan when it steadies and breathes in a calm you didn't know she had been wanting. She ties her bag at the mouth with a knot that believes in tomorrow's fingers. She steps away, and the line learns to flow again. In a corner, a water jar stands in a tub of sand. The sand is damp, and the jar learns coolness from the patience of evaporation. Cups have no handles, they want to be held. A ladle rests across the jar's lip, not in the water, on the mouth, like a guest who knows not to cross thresholds without invitation. To swallows live in the rafters, their loops through the air point themselves as the building's clock. Toward evening, the last barge of the day arrives. Its amphory wear wax caps like small hills. A steward's knife lifts a cap's edge and sets it back not to pry, to breathe. He smells for vinegar and finds only calm oil. He places a little wooden float in the neck. The float remembers where the scratch lives. It does not argue. A second steward makes a chalk mark on a jar's shoulder and writes a curve on a tablet. The curve is not a number, it is a promise to fetch the number later if someone needs to sleep conservatively. Satisfactions here are small by design. Small is durable. If you wake and wonder, we are at the key where ropes agree. In the warehouse, where air is a colleague. Near the office window, where a beam teaches fairness. By the jar that calls itself with sand and modest science. You can join us at the sound of a wheel wedge tapping home, or at the shine of a mooring ring that remembered tallow, or at the soft hiss of grain poured into a sieve. None of these will ask you to decide anything quickly. The night archivist walks a rectangle, river edge to crane, crane to office, office to dahlia, dahlia to door. He writes with the nail that has learned docks, ring tallow, ash, smooth rope open not used, coils set flat crane wheel true, sling sound cart wedges in niche, grease at axle sack auger sample taken, plug set, new seal press sieve clear airflow doors faced, floor on piers cap present rim cloth damp right hand for capacity ring met, lip oiled stopper fits tally cuts added tablet curve made token cart to bakery jar sand bed damp ladle mouth rest and owner beam level weight standard confirmed bag not correct last barge wax cap lifted, float met scratch, chalk at shoulder. He draws a ring set in stone, a sling on a hook, a floor on little piers, a beam scale tongue straight, a capacity ring inside a jar neck, pocket picture to carry into rest, a mooring ring with a calm shine, a loop of rope that opens when asked the tread wheel's interior, where a man walks without hurry, a sling lowering sacks to a cart, a steward's auger making a small, cold grain whispering through a sieve piers under a floor with a free, cool crawl of air, a cat agreeing to guard with her gaze half closed, a neck scratch inside an amphora, a wax cap eased and set back, a token travelling with a cart, a beam scales level, tongue ajar in damp sand with a ladle across its mouth. If your eyes close now, cargo will become supply without fuss, fairness will become peace at a window, and Rome will keep its habit of turning distance into dinner by means of rings, slings, and measured patience. The 13th part. Roads persuade distance to be reasonable. At first light they look almost alive, a pale ribbon with a darker thread down the crown, where wheels learn to share. The verge carries dew that resigns itself to boots and hooves. Ditches run low on either side, not to dramatize, to collect what rain forgets. A culvert hides under the road's weight and lets water cross without argument. A mason once showed a boy how to set the first stones like teeth that prefer company. The boy learned that a road has layers, earth laid firm, small stones that find each other, gravel that fills quiets, paving that listens. He learned the camber by higher hands rise from edge to middle so the road would shrug at storms, rather than answer them. At a milestone rounded and patient a hand can find a faint ring where someone once smoothed plaster to take letters no one needs tonight. The stone stands at a distance chosen when the empire wanted the sky to agree with a rule of thumb and stride. A courier lifts a palm to the stone, not to ask directions, to mark a moment. His mule shakes a head, accepts a nosebag, and eats in the rhythm of someone who knows that rest is part of speed. The courier checks a strap's tongue and rubs the saddle seam with tallow that remembers yesterday's warmth. A packet sits under a flap tied with a knot that opens cleanly. The packet carries 3 seals impressed by hands that have earned the right to travel without speeches. If sleep arrives, let it. We are among crowns that shed rain, milestones that keep quiet, ditches that mine their lanes, and packets that carry promises more than words. When you return, the culvert will still move water under the road. The camber will still teach wheels to choose the middle. The knot will still offer to open without fuss. The Mancio the way station wakes as the sun studies the horizon. Its courtyard holds a well that likes to be visited with a rope wound the right way. A host sets out buckets that know which hook to prefer. The hooks learn gentleness from years of not dropping. A farrier checks a hoof, trims a nail, lifts the foot the way people lift a sleeping child. No warnings, no suddenness. A cook warms a griddle that meets flatbread with the sound of a small agreement. On a bench by the door, a board shows symbols for services, a horseshoe for the forge, a jug for water, a leaf for a calm place to sit, no words to read. The road speaks in shapes too. An itinerary tablet lies on a table near the entrance. It is made of wood and cloth, and wax it folds like the day, and opens like it. It shows crossings and rest places drawn as dots and little roofs. A finger traces from the junction near the river to the pass that gives a view to the valley where a great city keeps its own weather. A clerk uses a style of speech that never rushes. 2 mounts today, 3 if the pass is stubborn. He ties a tag to the courier's packet, 1 loop, 2, tucked. The loop will obey fingers on arrival. It always does. Beyond the porch, the road rises to meet a bridge that believes in stone. Archers step across the stream with knees made of keystones. A carpenter once built the wooden formwork that taught the stones their curve. The river took the wood away later, grateful for the lesson. A carved cup water upstream makes the current decide to be polite. Below, fish reconsider their plans. At the crown, a wind that has crossed fields and found a reason to slow down brushes the face and sends a thought ahead to the next mile. The railing low and modest remembers how many hands have used it to doubt, and then not doubt. Surveyors left their pieces here and there. A Groma cross of arms on a vertical pole stood in this very earth to persuade sightlines to be straight. Now a small pile of pebbles at the ditch lip shows where they were picky about a curve. Picky is not pride. It is a form of care for people who will never meet you. Behind the ditch, a hedge that would be nothing to paint has learned to be enough to keep cattle from believing in public rights that do not exist. Fields hold their discipline by low things, twine on a stake, a line of stones, a habit of not testing. If you drift, the Mancio will continue setting out cups and rope. The forge will keep its smell of iron and kindness. The bridge will keep its curve. The hedge will keep its patience. The road does not need your eyes to be well behaved. At noon, heat sits on the paving, but not the ferocious kind. A cart pauses at a pull-out marked with a lay-by stone. The driver pours a little water on a hub and listens for the sound that says it will be calm the rest of the day. He checks wedges. He checks straps. He touches the mule's flank and says a name the mule knows is a name and not a reprimand. In the shade, a woman counts the day's remaining measures on a cord with knots that let her fingers skip without eyes. She has walked these knots 4 years. She knows where a hill will ask for a sip and where a slope lets you forget a minute's thirst. The posting relay mutations keeps its string of mounts like a choir that never argues about pitch. Harness hangs with buckles loosened to a mark scratched where leather likes to remember. A boy walks along and oils each buckle with wool, not enough to drip, enough to keep time out of the hinge. He does not know who will ride which horse. He only knows that riding requires yesterday's elbow to agree with today's strap. A trough sits parallel to the road, so animals can stand and drink without negotiating who is senior. Water enters at one end and leaves at the other. Little stones on the bottom teach hooves to be careful. No one instructs them. The stones do. The road does its small miracles without needing to be named. In a low spot, brush drains draw clear threads into a ditch in a high spot. The crown sheds and moves on. At a curve, a marker shows a white face to the inside eye and a dark face to the outer, so night can tell which way is kindness. At a cut, the exposed stone shows thin bedding planes, where a hand once tapped with a pick in the patient time that turns cliff into causeway. The pick used to belong to a man whose son now oils buckles. This is how roads work. They ask everyone for a modest contribution, and then return more than they borrowed. If you wake and wonder, we are near the milestone where a palm prints dust, at the Mancio courtyard, where the well rope remembers its twist, on the bridge, where the water has learned to go, where the arch suggests. You can rejoin us wherever a wheel rut carries the shine of many days, or where a way station door shows the scuff at the height of a good boot. The road will not have noticed your absence. Roads are unconditional. Evening brings a different kindness. A torch in a wool basket becomes a small moon that knows when to be quiet. In the stable, hay leans in a manger that keeps its generosity at a consistent height. A groom brushes a coat with strokes that count the day backward and then stop at enough. In a corner, a chest holds spare nails, a file, a rasp that keeps its bite by not living wet. The lid carries a line of scratches where people have set and lifted things enough times to call the marks tradition. Tradition here means this worked last week. The night archivist comes with dust on his shoes and takes a drink at the trough because he knows the water flows through and does not stay to remember mouse. He writes with the nail that has travelled. Camber true ditch clear culvert mouth 3 milestone plaster ring faint packet 3 seals. Not opens clean Mancio buckets paired to hooks well rope twist kept forge hoof trimmed. Nail set tablet fold good tag loop twice. Tucked bridge keystones firm. Cut water sound gromosite remembered by curve hedge. Held lay by stone in place hub quiet wedges ready trough parallel. Thread through buckles oiled at scratch brush drains drawing curve marker faces set cut planes true chest nails dry. He draws a little road with crown and ditches. A milestone cylinder. A bridge arch. A groma cross. A trough parallel to a line. Pocket picture to carry into rest. The crown soft rise from edge to middle a milestone with a palm print of dust a packet with 3 seals under a flap, a well rope wound the right way a hoof lifted like a sleeping childer. Flatbread agreeing with a griddle a fold out tablet with little roofs, an arch over water, with a quiet cut water, a cart's wedge, under a wheel a trough, that trains hooves to be consider it a brush drain, giving a clear thread to the ditch a curve marker with 2 faces a chest with dry nails. If your eyes close now, distance will shorten itself in proper increments, rest will arrive where it should, and Rome will keep turning horizons into evenings by means of camber, kindness, and the habit of stopping exactly where a milestone says you can.